What is going on there, boys and girls? Jim here, RCAD. Today is Tuesday, January 30th, 2024. And yes, you already know what we're doing here. You read the title. We are unboxing a ROC Hobbies, FMS Hobbies, 1/6 scale MB Scaler 1941 Willy's Jeep. That is a mouthful. I can't wait to see what this girl looks like on the inside. I've been putting this truck on the back burner for the last few years now. I just couldn't do it anymore. I had to get this vehicle. So this is an early birthday gift from my parents. Very much appreciated, Mom and Dad and my brother Ian and my niece Rebecca, for you guys pooling your money together to get me this gift. It was very, very much appreciated. And it's roughly 26 days early. My birthday's not till next month, till February 25th. So 26 days early, and I just couldn't wait any longer. So here we go, boys and girls. Without any further ado, let's crack the tape open on this ROC Hobbies FMS Hobby 1/6 scale MB Scaler Jeep and see what she looks like on the inside. Let's crank our camera up a little bit here and see what she looks like here. Can't wait. Hopefully everybody can see what's going on here. You got this taped up pretty darn good. Using a razor knife to open this up. Kids, be careful with knives. If you're not a careful kid, have your parents do this for you. Trying to make sure that I don't cut into anything on the inside of the Jeep here, inside the box. Now this vehicle was ordered from A-Main Hobbies, not being sponsored by anybody, but pretty obvious. We got a sticker sheet right there from A-Main Hobbies. Much appreciated, A-Main, for all the stickers there. Another car to add to the collection from you guys. Oh, we got a wine voucher in here too from somebody. Oh, there we go. For all you winos out there, came with a free wine voucher. This is a good looking vehicle. I can see it already, man. This is very well put together. Very well put together. Whole box designed. Very scale looking. Absolutely beautiful, this box. It would have been a shame if this was damaged in transit on the way here. It does have a few dents and dings on the outer shell on the box, so I'm hoping everything on the inside is okay. Excuse the lack of flash here, boys and girls. I don't want to blow us out here with a flash. Oh, we got a manual or something here on the inside. Right down here. Push that out of there. Oh, there we go. 1/6 scaler, 1941 MB. That's a pretty thick manual. A lot of details in there. Well, we'll go through that briefly as we get into our unboxing video. So right now, let's just put this off to the side for the moment. Pretty thick manual once again. And we'll proceed to unbox our Jeep from our other box here. Do this as quick as possible. Hey, she's got a grab handle up on top. That's nice. Beauty. And everything else appears to be okay on our box here. Packed in foam. Wrapped with a thin layer of cardboard. A few details about our Jeep. We'll take our camera off our tripod and get a better look at this. Not too bad all in all. More details across the bottom, so we'll take a peek at those as well. And nothing up on top other than our ROC Hobbies 1/6 1941 MB Scaler. RSP&P. Well, we know just RTR, so there we go on that. Alright, so let's get our camera off the tripod here and get a closer look at our box. Great looking box, great box art here. ROC Hobbies. Once again, great looking Jeep there. Very scale looking. Look at that, man. Looks pretty darn good. Excuse our squeaky tripod and the unprofessionalism here on my channel. But that is a good looking vehicle. Plane in the background, I think that's a P-51 Mustang maybe. I'm not too sure on my planes, but I think it's a Mustang. Miss Kentucky State there. Not too sure what scale that is. Go along with the Jeep. I might have to get an airplane now. I don't have any airplanes on the channel. I used to have a few airplanes when I was younger, but might have to get one now just to go along with this Jeep. It's just such a cool looking vehicle. Alright, so let's take a look at the back half of the box, spinning around here. Once again, it's not going to be the most professional unboxing video that anybody's ever seen, that's for darn sure. We'll see what we got going on here with all our items. Maybe key on our flash a little bit. Hopefully it doesn't blow us out on our lighting. And check some things out here. Alright, first and foremost, our body. We've got our realistic injection molded body, body on frame design, servo driven steering wheel, functional headlights and anti-aircraft light, fold away front windshield, injection molded engine with functional hood, functional spare wheel. Fits most 1/6 scale figures, so Army figures, G.I. Joe guys, not being sponsored by anybody, would fit in here supposedly. Optional canvas top, pre-painted shovel and axe on the side, cushion and upholstered seats. Electronics, it has a 550 size 35 turn motor, provides fantastic torque, fully waterproof receiver, and Hobbywing 1060 brushed ESC. Chassis, all-terrain 324mm wheelbase crawler chassis, true ladder frame chassis design, grippy tires for all-terrain performance, beadlock wheels, oversized battery compartment, linear gear reduction set. So that's on the transmission itself, how the transmission is set up. And that might be very limited. That's one of my thoughts on this vehicle is, can we lower the gearing on this vehicle? And I don't think we can. I think the only way to really change the gearing on this vehicle is to change out the motor itself for something with a little bit more torque. Adjustable oil-filled shocks. Not too sure what the millimeter is on those. I want to say 90s. I want to say that they're 90s. Looking at our scale art down here on the bottom, pretty cool. They've got the Jeep just kind of doing a little bit off-roading here. Going through its natural environment. And it looks alright. It looks pretty cool splashing through the water. Alright, so we know there's nothing else to see on this side. There's more foam. Front of our box down here. And last little bit of information is over here on this side, on the bottom half of the box. ROC Hobby 1/6 scale 1941 MB scaler. ROC Hobby is proud to announce our latest creation, the 1/6 scale 1941 MB scaler. 2 years in the making, the MB scaler is the result of dedicated research through countless historical photos and documentation. Dedicated to the soldiers who served with this legendary vehicle, the ROC Hobby MB scaler was designed to be the most accurate radio-controlled MB on the market today, so a very scale-looking vehicle as far as things go, supposedly. We'll find out. Scale enthusiasts will appreciate the detailed pre-painted and pre-assembled body, featuring functional lights, servo-driven steering wheel, very cool, and a fold-away windshield, also very cool. Small features such as the fabric straps that hold the painted axe and shovel to the chassis add to the realistic look and to the feel of the vehicle. The cabin, or the inside of the Jeep, replicates the real vehicle with microprint instruction labels, gear levers, and seating that fits 1/6 scale soldiers. Cool as well. Performance was not overlooked when creating the MB Scaler. A modern crawler chassis was chosen to retain the body-on-frame and solid axle design of the full-scale MB. Oil-filled shocks replaced leaf springs to allow for axle articulation. Okay, well, we're going to touch base on that. Oil-filled shocks replaced the leaf springs to allow for axle articulation. Now, I'm pretty sure the original one probably had leaf springs and oil-filled shocks. Maybe it didn't have the shocks, but I'm sure it had leaf springs. These guys basically swapped out the leaf springs for a set of links and a set of oil-filled shocks to give it a more realistic look, I suppose, when it's going off-road, so the suspension is a little bit more fluid, definitely giving you a little bit more articulation with the links versus leaf springs, but kind of killing the scale realism by having links versus leaf springs. Leaf springs would definitely be more scale across the board. So not so scale with the coils and links versus leaf springs. All right, narrow wheels feature specially formulated high-grip tires with period-correct tread to provide maximum traction while retaining the scale look of the MB. So military tires, scale military tires on this baby. Don't miss your chance to own one of the most iconic vehicles of the Second World War. So there we go. Last words there. Don't miss your chance to own one. And she is definitely a good-looking vehicle. Down here we have our specifications. Length 530.5 millimeters, width 258 millimeters, height 270 millimeters, wheelbase 324 millimeters. So to put that into perspective, boys and girls, this has the same wheelbase as a Red Cat Gen 8 Scout 2. Version 1 or version 2, Red Cat Gen 8 Scout 2 has a wheelbase of 324 millimeters. So exact same as the Scout. Ground clearance 39.5 millimeters. That's not too bad. Approach angle 58 degrees. Departure angle 22 degrees. Breakover angle is 36 degrees. Looking at the vehicle over here on the side, once again, let's pan this around and do a little bit more adjusting here on our camera. Back this off just a pinch maybe. And look at what we got going on here. So optional canvas top shown here, C1031 is our part number on that. I did order this optional canvas top as well as a machine gun that goes in the back. All right, so for optional stuff here, they've got a 50 caliber machine gun that you can put in the back, our canvas top here to go over the top of this, as well as a full-scale military trailer to go behind this vehicle, as well as an anti-tank gun to go behind the vehicle. So a few other options for the vehicle other than their canvas top and the machine gun that go in the back. You can get the anti-tank gun and a full-size trailer as well. Looking at some of our other included features, we have a 5-gallon jerry can on the back with a little strap holding it in place. That is very cool. All the little scale details here. Our full-size spare tire. Our hood opens and closes. The windshield folds up and down. Our little axe and shovel on the side here held in with these fabric straps. It's very cool looking. Cool looking Jeep all the way around. Checking out our interior, we've got some stickers there with all our labels on it. And our steering wheel and our gear shift levers. Little mirror there, rear view mirror. Very cool across the board. ROC Hobby stuff here, email stuff there, yada 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 there. Battery and charger sold separately there. This product is not a toy. Adult supervision is required for those under 14 years of age. Read all your warning labels and instructions and all that other good nonsense. Well, there we go, boys and girls. That is a good look at our truck and a good look at the box. Next step is to slide her out of her little wrapper there and see what she looks like on the inside. So let's get to that. Let's back our camera off a little bit here. Maybe raise it up a little bit. Once again, excuse our professionalism here. Lack of professionalism. And see if we can slide this thing out of our container here without damaging anything. We want to kind of retain our factory wrapper as much as we can. Making sure there's no tape on it anywhere holding this thing in place, and there doesn't appear to be. It's got a good hold of it. Definitely does not want to come free very easily. Our cardboard is starting to catch down here on the front. And get that past the handle. Definitely a snug fit for this paper. Not the easiest to do on camera, that's for sure, without damaging the box here. Definitely not pulling from the right angle. I'm sure there's a joke in there somewhere about that. Let's see what we can do here. Not want to come out too freely here, I tell you that. There we go. Yeah. Easier said than done on that. We did get a little rip right there in the process. That's a bummer. That is a bummer. ROC Hobby. Encased in foam. So we got a couple little latches right here. Not too sure if those have anything to do with anything, but I'm sure they probably do. Yes, they do. That's nice. Oh, wow. That is pretty cool. We'll have to get our camera in a little bit closer to take a peek at this one. That is definitely pretty darn cool. That's a big Jeep, looking at it from here. I don't know if we're going to be able to get our camera up high enough to really appreciate this. But that is a cool looking vehicle right there. Wow. A lot bigger than I was expecting as well. Wasn't sure what to expect with this vehicle. The wheelbase was the only thing that I was really, sure about. Was our width on that. So the rest of it was unsure how big it was going to be compared to the rest of the vehicles, to the TRX4 Broncos and other vehicles. We've got some plastic strips here on the windshield. I peel that back here and set our windshield bit down. Foam in between the hood and the windshield. We have a little peel off sticker over here on the side. Let's just take our camera off the tripod here and take a look at the vehicle. Alright, so camera off the tripod, looking at our foam crate. Very cool. Hinged with some tape right here. It does have latches to unlatch it from the other portion up here, the top portion. Once again, very cool looking vehicle, for sure. Rubber tires, nice feel to them. Sorry for the lack of flash here. Nice inside on the vehicle interior. We'll get a better look at that here in a second. Looks like we've got our hood supports right here. Our nylon strap down, our gas can, canvas seats, a little parts box back here. Now, to my knowledge, there's supposed to be a couple little cabinets or compartments back here in the real MB scale Jeep. The real Willy's Jeep had a couple little compartments back here in the back corner of the wheel wells for storage, and this does not have those. But pretty realistic looking here otherwise on the inside. Of course, it's up to a owner's discretion, or vehicle's owner's discretion as to whether or not how they want to paint it and detail it. Add your own special touches to the vehicle to make it your own, is basically what I'm saying. We've got some plastic on the windshield that needs to get removed. I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but I did order the canvas top and the machine gun from FMS, but I'm just waiting on that stuff to arrive. Not sure when it's going to show up. It might be here by the time we do our first run. It might not. We'll see. Little sticker here that says peel off, so we'll peel that one off. We have to clean this spot off as well where that sticker was at. A little bit of residue there. I'm not too sure if these are latched down or what. Oh, the hood does open. The latches don't seem to be functioning, so probably just pops open. Yep, there we go. Pretty detailed looking motor there. No doubt about that. Definitely needs to be finely detailed, you know. Add your little bits of fine touches with paint and trim and whatnot to make that look a little bit more realistic, but very cool looking. See our latches right there for the hood. That's what's clipping it down. Make sure that it fits in on either side of those latches there. Yeah, not bad. Not too shabby. Now let's get our camera back in the tripod and pull it out of the box and see what she looks like up close and personal. And get this baby removed. Alright, well, I see some stuff in the bottom of the box here. Excuse me for moving this around. We have parts of our transmitter down in here. Half of the transmitter. And the other half of the transmitter right there. Now that's pretty unique. That's everything that's inside the box. Nice storage compartment, there's no doubt about that. Great place to keep the Jeep, to keep it dust free. Inside this little compartment here. If you didn't want to put the vehicle on display, it does have this beautiful case to store it in. Which is made out of foam, but hey, it's still a beautiful case. No doubt about it. Now let's get our Jeep kind of position here. Very cool looking Jeep, man. What an awesome looking truck. Looking at this transmitter, a little bit goofy here. It looks like it's broken, but it's not. Here's the top half of our transmitter. ROC 2.4 gigahertz FHSS RC system. Channel 3 reversing. Channel 3 EPA. Channel 4 EPA. Not too sure. We're going to have to refer to the manual on that. On-off switch right back here. Little slider switch. Our steering wheel. Our throttle. And two contacts for the lower half of the controller for the transmitter batteries. So checking out the lower half, we would install our batteries down here, I believe. Maybe I could be wrong on where the batteries go. Maybe not. No, it looks like the batteries go in at the top. I was wrong. Right up here. So that's odd. This little piece comes out. Looks like we put 4 AA's down on this baby. And put this back in place. Oh, this sits on top of the batteries. And fits in there like that. There are two contacts. Make contact with the transmitter. So let's slap a couple batteries in it real quick here. Hit pause and throw a couple batteries in and see what it looks like put together. Mental note before we get started on that, there is a direction sticker down in here, so shows you which way to go with your polarity. The outside there, they got the positive going down. On the inside over here, they got the positive going up, so make sure you follow the instructions there. Get our lid put in place. Making sure to get our little tang slid underneath here. Check out our contacts, making sure everything is working. I think it is. We'll attach our lower half to our upper half. We can assume it goes together like that. As far as how it slides together, I'm not too sure. This part moves it down. Be better off to read the instruction manual, I'm sure. Alright, let's see if we can get this slid together here. That was pretty easy. Locks in place. Push up on that button back there to separate it. And what do we have here? We've got a steering trim, left and right. Throttle trim, left and right. Another switch right here, which might be our lights or not. I'm not too sure. It's a 3-position switch. 1, 2, and 3. And it looks like it says channel something on it right down there. I can't really see with my naked eye, but maybe we can see it with the camera. Channel 4, 4-channel. 4-channel. Or channel 4. And it's a 3-position switch. So there we go. Steering wheel, forward, reverse, on-off switch. And it appears to be working. We have a blue light up there, a blue light special on our transmitter. Hopefully everything jives okay. So there we go on that. Taking a look at our Jeep, let's get our camera back off the tripod and get a closer look at this vehicle. Try to get a quick overview on this baby. She is a good looking truck, I tell you what. What a good looking Jeep. Love the scale realism with our shovels here. Plastic shovel, plastic handle. Little nylon straps holding things down. Little plastic axe. Plastic handle. Being held in place. Very cool looking. Realistic looking mirrors over here on the side. With the reflector on the inside. Very cool looking. Nice looking gauges. Very realistic looking. Across the board. Our fuel gauge over here on the left. Oil pressure gauge. Speedometer. Water temperature maybe. And voltage over here. Amps. Dashboard. Caution. Stickers there. Just wow. Super realistic looking. Across the board there with all that stuff. Windshield, once again, we know it folds down. Snaps into place. Pretty cool. And it looks like it latches back into place up here in the upper position as well. There's a latch right back here, I see. And I think that fits into a little groove back here. So if I got to push in like that, up there we go. Yep, and she's locked in place. Pretty cool. One-handed operation there. Spin the vehicle around, looking at that 5-gallon jerry can on the back. Pretty cool looking. A little tie-down strap. Holding it in place. I'm not sure if that's holding it in place or if it's just there for decoration, but it's definitely cool. Not too sure if this vehicle comes with taillights. No, it does not come with taillights. Put my finger behind it. So we're going to have to add some taillights to the vehicle. Another little side project there. Check out our spare tire. Pretty grippy tire. Flexible. Not extremely supple, but it has some give to it. We have a pintle hitch on the back. Realistic looking bumper here with our shock absorbers, which are strictly for decoration. Non-functioning, I'm sure. Brackets to hold for our hood right there, hood support brackets. And I'm sure these come out of here and probably fit into these grooves right there. And yeah, that would be the frame for your hood or your roof. Read your instruction manual, Jim. Before you start pulling stuff apart. So these are all the brackets and stuff for the canvas top. And this is all zip tied together, so we probably have to unzip this in order to get this to fold out. Alright, so let's check out the bottom of the chassis here before we do anything else. A couple well-placed body pins back under here, very well hidden to fold our body up. The body simply folds forward. Looking at the underside of the chassis, plastic drive shafts, metal links going to the axles, ball bearings fore and aft, I believe. I'm not too sure what's going on with this one. That one almost looks like the bearing is slid out of the axle. But I could be wrong on that. Not too sure what that is all about. Maybe that's just a spacer. Maybe that's just the way it is on that pinion. Attempting to turn our transmission, and it's probably not going to turn because of our lineal gearbox on the inside. And what do we have? An XT something or other connector here, XT60 possibly for our battery. 4-link suspension system, oil-filled shocks all the way around. Maybe not 90 millimeters. They might be a little bit smaller than that by far, but they are definitely fat. Some fat shocks. All right, let's pull some body pins and see what she looks like underneath here. Blindly pull out these quite large body pins. And can we tilt our body forward? Yep, there we go. Tilting our body forward. Checking out the underside. Injection molded plastic. Very heavy, very weighty. Our battery tray. Shock absorbers. Transfer case. And our transmission, our lineal transmission. Whole body is tilting, bumper and all. Kind of stretching our wires here. No prop support to hold this up. Need some kind of prop support to hold this thing up. So let me set the camera somewhere and maybe get a better look at this, or not. Maybe we'll just spin it around. There's our servo for our steering wheel attached to the body. Our motor and our lineal transmission, which is kind of all in a row there. The gear reduction system. So I think that pinion gear is like a one-size-fits-all pinion gear. Not too sure what we got going on the inside here. We'll have to tackle that on another video. Certainly not this one. Mid-video interruption. All right, boys and girls. I want to show you guys and gals what the inside of that transmission looks like. And the only spot that you can see it is in the very back of the manual. Well, not the very back. Page 65 is the start of our blow-up schematic. So right here, page 17 is the last page in English. And then it moves on to other different languages. We start off, I think, with German is the next one we go into. But if we go to page 65, we start getting into our blow-up schematics on our vehicle. Once again, it's going to be the only spot that we can see what that transmission looks like while we're here and we're looking at tires and wheels. Here's a shot of our wheels. This is a plastic beadlock wheel. I'm not too sure if there's a foam in there or not. That looks like a foam right there. But as far as things go, it doesn't feel like there's a foam in there. They do have an open air hole, so that does let dirt and water in. Not that that's bad, but just saying. As far as getting the tire on and off of the vehicle, there is a plastic hub on the wheel. You need to remove these 5 small hex screws to get that hub off. You have to grip that hub pretty tightly and wiggle it around a little bit to get it out of the wheel itself. There is a little locator pin on the back half of the hub that locates itself into the wheel, and it's kind of a snug fit, so you really got to grip that to pull that out of there. I'm sure there's a choke in there somewhere, but don't use pliers because you'll end up marring up that hub. So kids, you might have to have your parents do that for you because you need a pretty tight grip. At least I did on mine in order to remove those. You had to really grip on it to wiggle that loose. And then there's just a standard wheel nut below. Pull off that wheel nut. We've got a regular 12 millimeter hex on the back half of the wheel, like most 1/10 scale vehicles. So wheels are tires are interchangeable with other vehicles. FYI on that, just a mental note. Looking at the rest of the vehicle, or looking at least at the rear axle here, or front axle. Once again, when I seen that drive shaft pinion, or that drive shaft outdrive cup, I thought the bearing was sticking out of the outside of our pinion here. So I thought we had a bearing sticking out of our pinion, but it was just the back half of our outdrive cup on our drive shaft that was kind of throwing me off. They had that little black ring going around the outdrive cup, and it made it look like there was a bearing sticking out of the pinion, but it was just the outdrive cup on our drive shaft. So there's our front axle and rear axle right there, or front axle and rear axle over here, excuse me. Taking a look at our shocks, 10 millimeter spacer on our shock shafts. That's terrible. That is a hard plastic spacer, and yes, that is 10 millimeters. I measured that with the Blue Point tape measure. That is 10 millimeters. And that's limiting your travel. This is a 90 millimeter shock, so you don't have 90 millimeters of travel. 90 millimeters is from eyelet to eyelet. So that's how long your shock is 90 millimeters fully extended. That's not how much travel you have on it. But this 10 millimeter spacer is eating up about a third of the travel for this shock. Almost a little bit more than a third. So it's eating up quite a bit. I did, later on in the video, if you keep watching, I did rebuild these shocks and remove those spacers, which opened up a can of worms with our front suspension and some geometry and steering issues that we had to get into in order to solve some issues and take advantage of our travel. So we did solve all the problems for the most part. So can keep watching and you'll see how I did that nonsense. All right, so here's a peek at our transmission. This is what we really wanted to see here, was our lineal transmission and how this is all set up. So it's not like a traditional transmission, I don't think. I don't know, this is my first one of this style, so I'm not too sure. But here's our pinion gear right here. We've got this outer ring on our transmission that fastens onto the motor via 2 screws. Right here, these two right there. Not too sure if that's adjustable. It doesn't look like it's adjustable, really. We've got this counter gear right here on this jack shaft right there. Not too sure what drives what. We've got our pinion gear right here, which goes to our motor. Not too sure if this pinion gear goes to this counter gear, which maybe goes over to this other gear, and then back to our spur gear and slipper clutch assembly before it makes its way out to the transfer case. This is the output right there. So I'm not too sure how they've got this going on, or if this is our spur gear or our pinion gear. This one looks like our pinion gear right here going to the motor. It looks like this gets attached to this half of the case on the back half. So all this stuff goes in here. This half gets attached to this half. So all this stuff is on the back half of here. And all this stuff goes in this half. And it continues out to the transfer case from there. So once again, I believe this is our pinion gear. And this would be the next gear that the pinion gear touches, which makes me think that this is a one size only fitment here. And then this goes to the shaft, which comes over to this gear, and then back over to our spur gear. Whether the spur gear is adjustable or not, or interchangeable or not for different sizes is a different story. If we went bigger on the spur gear, we could get a little bit more low-end power. If we went smaller, we get more top speed. If we go bigger on the pinion gear, that'll give us more top speed. If we go smaller, it'll give us more low-end power. If this isn't adjustable, and the only adjustments we can do is with the motor, then if you want more low-end power out of your motor, you have to go to a higher turn motor for more torque, higher turns for more torque. If you want more top speed, go to a lower turn motor. And if you want something that's going to be a little bit above this 550, like let's say a 35 turn, let's say you want a 30 to 35 turn motor, but you want something with just a little bit more low-end snap and a little bit more higher RPM, well then a brushless motor might be more up your alley. A brushless motor of equal equivalency to this 35 turn motor will have a little bit more low-end torque and a little bit more RPM than what this brushed 540 or brushed 550 can do, or what it can put out. So this is a brushed 35 turn 550 that's in here currently. A brushless motor of equal equivalency would give you a little bit more low end and a little bit more top end than what this one will. That's what I'm trying to say. So there is a peek at our lineal transmission, and once again, I don't think that that's adjustable. And there's a peek at our rear axle right there. Transfer case right here, just to try to cruise through this nonsense, looking at our outputs and whatnot. How all this stuff goes together. That gear gets fastened to here with the screws. That's interesting. All right, there we go. Transfer case does have an output shaft right here on the back, another one. And I touched base that somewhere in a video about that, about some cheaper 6x6 that I've seen online for sale that have 2 different drive shafts going to the back axles. Like this one will go to the center axle, and then this will go to a pilot shaft or a jack shaft, and then go back to the rear axle instead of just going to the center axle and then having another pinion shaft coming off of the middle axle, going to the other axle and feeding it like that. So a little bit different that it's got that output shaft right there. It doesn't really matter, but it's just something I noticed. And then putting our body together, spare tire, gas can, the whole 9 yards. I mean, it shows you how to kind of put it together in a blueprint form. So you have to be a little bit handy to be able to understand what order all this stuff goes in and how it all goes together. There's no written instructions step by step, but they just give you the blown up schematic to give you the general idea. And then we move on into parts listings and things of that nature. Now, there's a lot of stuff in here, boys and girls, in the parts that I, that we can see. They've got everything for the truck. Not to jump around here, but there's some optional parts right here that are marked with an O. S is spare parts, apparently, and O is optional. O, S. So all these O's here are optional parts that they have, which are an aluminum front outdrive shaft assembly, aluminum steering C-hub parts, a bushing set. I don't know what that's about, if that's bearings or bushings. 1/6 scale 1941 Willy's aluminum steering bracket, aluminum wiper bracket, aluminum rear bumper, aluminum front bumper, machine gun, and then our metal links and body screws. So those are back into standard parts here. So all our O stuff here, machine gun, I do have that on order. But we've got our aluminum front bumper, aluminum rear bumper, wiper brackets, steering brackets. I went to FMS's website, and according to their website and these part numbers, this stuff doesn't exist. So we might be too late on that. Vehicle's a few years old. Don't know if anybody even knew this stuff existed in the back of the manual. But there it is in the back of the manual. If you buy one, you can try to find these parts. Part number C1088 for the front bumper and C1087. I think that would be key to have some aluminum bumpers. That'd be nice. But they don't exist according to FMS's website and ROC Hobby's website. Or FMS ROC Hobby, sorry. It's one unit there. So yeah, there we go on that nonsense. There are some optional parts that may or may not exist. As far as our pinion gear, we've got it right there. MB pinion gear C1097. Doesn't tell you what size it is. Just tells you that that is a standard part or spare part. And there we go, boys and girls. There is a quick peek at our manual and some of those blown up schematics. Just wanted to show you that stuff there, touch base on our transmission, and what all that nonsense looked like, and what the rest of the stuff looked like as far as our blow up schematics. Transmission pretty goofy there, and don't think it's adjustable, and they were stuck with what we got there for the most part. All right, so there we go. There's a peek at that. There's our Hobbywing 1060 ESC. I'll probably be swapping that out for a Hobbywing 1080 ESC, as well as a different receiver, hooking it up to a 4-channel or possibly 5-channel receiver and binding it up to my Spectrum DX4C transmitter. But the shocks are definitely fat. It's got some fat shocks on the back. There's no doubt about it, all the way around. And these are aluminum body. No, that's a plastic body. That's a plastic body shock. That is a plastic cap up on top. Plastic retainer. Metal springs, obviously. And I'm not sure if this is a bump stop. Yep, this is a hard plastic bump stop as well, which looks like it's about 10 millimeters. Just guessing. So a 10 millimeter bump stop to limit your articulation on the back. Wah, wah, wah. That's a bit of a bummer. Pretty good looking Jeep all in all. I see where our ESC is located. They got our on-off switch mounted upside down on the ESC. Not too sure what we've got our braking set at and everything else. We'd have to get a closer look at that. I want the pin to the right for LiPo. Yep, it looks like it's set for LiPo. And as far as our brake is concerned, forward, brake, reverse. Forward, brake, forward, reverse. It doesn't look like we have a pin in that slot. So they've got it kind of free rolling with no brake. Forward brake reverse would be right here on the far right side. Forward brake, forward reverse. So they got us just set up for forward and reverse and no brake, because there is no pin over here on the right hand side. So I do have a pin laying around. I could put one over here and set it up so we do have forward brake and reverse. Right now with this ESC, they just have it set up for forward and reverse and no braking whatsoever. So maybe that's got something to do with our lineal transmission. I'm not too sure. But it is set up for a lithium polymer battery, just not set up for brake. There's our steering servo all the way at the front of the chassis, sitting between the frame rails. Our antenna cable sticking right there. Our antenna line sticking out right there. Metal half shafts leading towards, or a metal drive shaft leading towards the transmission. And looks like we've got metal CVDs on the drive shafts, but plastic drive shafts. Metal frame C-channel. Plastic body shocks, not much travel. And a beautiful looking Jeep all the way around, other than that little bit of, oh, we just knocked our on-off switch off right there. That's great. Just knock that off. That fits into a groove on the side of the ESC here. Just like this. Just like that. So I caught it with the front fender there when I was lowering this down. Get that baby right off. Now, trying to get this line back up. There we go. Line back up. Just need to put the body pins in. We'll put our camera back on our tripod and check out our articulation. Throw a battery in this baby and maybe check out some basic functions real quick. Now they say this is 2S and 3S compatible. I do have a 2S battery sitting here that's charged up and ready to go. Duratrax Onyx, 5.7 amp, 35C, 2S LiPo. But we don't have an XT60. Ah, my goodness. I don't think I actually have any batteries with an XT60 on them, to be honest with you boys and girls. I'm going to have to rig something up for this. Back from our brief intermission, and I have created a battery connector for our ESC. A quick adapter here, XT60 going to a T-style or a Dean-style connector. That way we can make that connection between our battery and the ESC. This is the only ESC that I have with an XT60 on it, so I had to make a custom connector to adapt to that. Now that we've got that done, we can power up our Jeep. Get our jumper wire plugged in, plugs in great, and that'll work just fine to our battery. All right, so a couple things I want to point out here, some things that I didn't necessarily notice and discovered during reading the manual briefly while in our downtime here. All right, getting in close and looking at our vehicle, battery tray did come with a couple of brackets for some Velcro straps. Now, you don't necessarily need any Velcro straps to hold your battery down because it has this pre-cut molding here, or pre-molded area for the battery to fit into. And it's a pretty snug fit with a 2S LiPo. 3S LiPos would be probably questionable in here. You might have to do some modifying with clearing out some plastic to get a standard 3S LiPo to fit in here, or something 5,000 milliamps or more to fit in here. It might be a tight fit. 2S LiPo fits in here nicely. Once again, I added a couple of straps to the battery tray, a couple of Velcro straps, just to keep this thing held in place. Now, once again, we don't necessarily need them. It's not like we're going to be taking this vehicle off-road and doing some serious crawling with it. This vehicle is more of a driving model, like a Ertl or a Revel model or a Monogram model, rather than a crawler. So there we go on that. So I figured out some other stuff, once again, boys and girls, that I read in the manual, and that was that we actually have a body prop to hold our body up in the air, as well as a hood prop to hold our hood up in the air. Did not know that, but hey, they show that stuff in the manual. So the body prop fits into this little hole right here, as well as the hole that the screwdriver is sitting on right here in front of the battery tray. There's a little molded notch right there. And that is where our body prop would sit. Swing our Jeep around. And that is sitting right here with our some of our roof brackets here. So right here we also have our windshield wipers for the Jeep right there in this little plastic bag. So we need to get those attached. Next step will probably be cutting these zip ties or nylon straps, getting our body prop out of here, and figuring out what we got to do with our hood. All right, so pull our makeshift screwdriver out of here, set our body down roughly for the moment, and take a peek at our hood once again, and our hood prop is included. Now, I kind of missed this on our initial look at the vehicle under the hood. And I kind of mentioned it'd be cool if they did have a hood prop in here, but they do. It's right here. Right there is a hood prop. Just kind of fits in to the body right up there, snaps in place, and then has like a little lockdown point right here that it fits into. So there we go. It does have a hood prop. That's very cool. Something that we didn't notice at first was that hood prop. So very cool FMS on the scale detail there with the hood prop. That is neat. Just gonna be careful when we close this to make sure that we have our hood on either side of these little faux latches there, making sure that it's not going to catch on the way down before we latch it in. Just like that. That would be cooler if they had a hand crank on the front of this. I think some of the old original Jeeps did have a hand crank. And it probably went right through this little hole right here. So that is very scale right there. That would be for a hand crank to go through, so you could and crank it up by hand if need be. We have an old Alice Chalmers farm tractor here on our property that starts up in the same way with a hand crank. It actually works pretty darn good. So there we go, boys and girls, on that. Here is our hood prop. We might as well just slide this out right now if we can. There we go. That's our hood prop. And there are the windshield wipers right here. And these get fit into place on our windshield, obviously. And the manual shows us what position to put them in. They want them basically straight up and down across the windshield. Windshield is filthy. Man, we need to wash this windshield. But they basically have them showing straight up and down on the windshield, like that. But you can put them in whatever position you want to have them in, whatever position you feel like. Manual shows straight up and down, but you can put them wherever you want. So here's our body prop rod right here. Nothing too spectacular. I was using a screwdriver a second ago. Once again, this fits into this notch right up here and into the body up there, just like that, supposedly. Which doesn't look very secure to me, but hey, that's how they have it set up. Now I noticed one thing on our transfer case here is that we have an extra output shaft right there on the top. And that kind of reminds me of some cheaper 6x6s that I've seen online. They had two different drive shafts going to the back axles for the 6x6s. They've got one drive shaft coming off of the back of the transfer case going to the center axle, and another one coming off the other spot on the transfer case going to the rear axle. So kind of a weird setup there with those two outputs coming off the back of our transfer case. Very weird. Most traditional 6x6s, they would have the output shaft coming off your transfer case like this, going down to your axle, and then the axle having another output shaft or another pinion coming off the back of that, which would go towards your rear axle. But some of those cheaper 6x6s weren't set up like that. They had a separate drive shaft for each axle. One going to the center axle and another one going to a jack shaft and then down to the rear axle. So that's kind of what we're seeing right here with this transfer case. But all our outputs look pretty solid here. All of our CVDs or whatever, outdrives, they all look pretty solid. And they are CVDs. And they are made of steel for the most part, from what I can see. Looking at our shocks once again, those big bump stops that they have on here, those are greater than 10 millimeters. I'm not too sure what our total length is on those bump stops, but I was looking at those off camera, and they are pretty darn healthy. They are pretty darn healthy. I'd say that's probably getting closer to 12 millimeters on that bump stop. It's pretty thick, pretty long. So you could eliminate that, remove that, and gain a little bit more travel out of your shocks. Of course, you would have to re-bleed your shocks, fill them back up with oil, and re-bleed them. And I think that needs to happen with these anyways, because they are these shocks are in pretty bad shape. Yeah, they don't feel too good. It feels like there's no oil whatsoever in there, so I have a feeling I'm going to have to tear these shocks apart and re-bleed them as it is. I will be removing that bump stop when I do, just to gain a little bit extra travel out of the back of this thing and off the front end as well. So a mental note there, if you remove your bump stops, you will have to re-bleed the shocks. You should probably re-bleed them anyways and change out the oil in them, because once again, these feel like they have absolutely no oil in them whatsoever. But it is what it is. It's not meant to be going out and bashing with. It's a very scale looking vehicle. Basically, once again, a radio controlled model you can drive around, which is very scale looking, and it is very scale looking. Let's cut our zip ties here and take a look at our roof brackets here. Remove our nylon straps here, zip ties. Alright, so we've got those removed. Now our hood bracketry or roof brackets should be all able to move around freely, which come unsnapped from our little hold down brackets there and slide out backwards out of our area back here. It's a pretty snug fit in between these hold downs. Oh, that's a pretty snug fit indeed, really snug. Just getting it past the spare tire and everything. That's a snug fit. Kind of forcing it up past that spare tire there at the same time. Try to pull that out of that bracket. Just like that. And getting it set up right. So I think this is going to slide into our lower brackets down here. There's a couple little notches on either side that fit these flat spots on either side of our roof bracketry here. Whatever you want to call this. Our framework here. So that fits in just like that on that side. And I'd imagine it's the same thing on the other side, right into this little groove right here. Just like this. It fits in there pretty snug. And then that would balance on your top like that. Once you had your rag top put in place, I'd imagine that would hold it all together somehow or another. So yeah, since we don't have that, we won't be worried about that at the moment. We'll just take this part back out of here and put it back in with our, back to where it was at previously, which was a pretty tight fit. Getting back into this other bracket area here. It's pretty good on that side, on the driver's side. Passenger side was pretty snug on the way out. And not so bad on the way back in. Pretty good fit. That sits in there just like that. Let's get our ESC turned on and plugged in. Use our roof prop and put this in place. Looks like we've got a couple positions for that roof prop underneath here. Pull our camera off our tripod and take a peek at those. So we've got one position right here and another position right there for that hood prop, and I don't see any other positions any further down the line. We've got our steering swivel once again mounted right up here for our steering wheel, and the steering swivel for the vehicle itself is right up here on the front of the chassis. Once again, looking at this ESC, no pin for our forward, brake, and reverse. According to the manual, if we flip through our manual here and look at that, which is pretty darn extensive, we'll turn our flash off here so we don't bake our camera out. There's our windshield wipers showing you what position they want those in. Now you can feel free to read through your manual. I suggest that you do that, peruse the whole manual. Looking at our transmitter is different, completely different than what they show in the manual. And all the little diagrams here with our numbers are different. So nothing corresponds in the manual here with our transmitter there. It's just totally different. Like we've got number 16 right here, this little 3-position switch. We go down to 16, it says 3-position switch, channel 3. If we look on our transmitter, it says channel 4. It actually says 4 and then channel. And that's our 3-position switch. The other one says channel 3. We've got our throttle trim once again right here, our steering trim right here, our power button right there, slide on and off. Our first selection right here is channel 3, EPA, a little minus and a plus. Then it gets confusing. It says channel 4 above that, EPA, and then channel 3 and reverse. So probably reversing channel 3. I don't know what's going on here. It looks pretty darn weird to me. Definitely different than what they've got going on here with this radio. This transmitter looks much nicer than what they have in the manual. by far compared to that one. So I don't know what's going on there. But things are totally different on these two transmitters. There's no doubt about that. And looking at our receiver, 4-channel receiver, apparently waterproof, apparently, as far as they say. And it's already set, once again, or the ESC is already set into LiPo mode with low voltage protection. There's also some throttle modes that you can go on here with half power, full power, 3/4 power. So if you're a new driver to RCs and you want to limit the power to 50% power, you can do that via the transmitter. And then switch it up to 75% power or full power. From the factory, it's set with full power, set in normal mode from the factory. But you can go through on the transmitter and change that up into different modes if need be. But ours, unfortunately, we cannot, because it's, well, maybe we can, but our transmitter is different than what they show in the manual here. So maybe our settings might be a little bit different as well. So they go into binding of the transmitter. It's already bound from the factory, but if you have a problem with it, they do have instructions in here how to rebind it, just in case. Stick calibration for all that other good nonsense. Getting your forward and reverse and your left and your right on your steering all dialed in. Your channel descriptions here. Channel 1, steering wheel. Channel 3, 3-position switch. Channel 2 is your throttle, always your throttle. Channel 4, it says reset button, for whatever that is. And talk about note, by default output on channel 4 is 1000 US. After each pressing the button will toggle between 1000 and 2000. So I guess when you're hitting channel 4, every time you hit that button, it's going to toggle between 1000 US and probably 1500, and then 2000, and maybe back to 1000. Who knows? Channel reverse on channel 2 here, or number 2, channel reversing. Talking about that. Steering, throttle reverse. Yada yada yada. Trims, steering trim, LED indicators. Feel free to look at all this other crap, boys and girls. If you get one of these, go ahead and look at all this stuff. Here we are talking about our default to your system. It's set to normal mode with your throttle positioning. You can set the beginner mode, which is quarter power, half power. You can set to 3/4 power or full power. So there you go on that. It's already set in normal mode to begin with. There's some stuff with their manual. Some stuff with their ESC and receiver. Right there, it's a 4-channel receiver. Car or boat, 2.4 gigahertz. Antenna, it's got 300 meter radius or range on the ground. So that's interesting. 4 channels. Same thing, receiver, 4-channel. I guess that was for a transmitter. This one's for a receiver, 4-channel. Antenna, 300 meter radius or distance. ESC setup, talking about all this other crap, 2S, 3S, blah, 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 blah. Feel free to look at all that, boys and girls. Feel free to check it all out. ESC with your forward, brake, and reverse. Now, here's the part that I wanted to look at here. When you're looking at the ESC on this first mode right here, on our first pin, it does say F, B, and R, forward, brake, and reverse. On the second one, on the second pin, it just says F and B, forward and brake. There is no R on the second one, on the ESC, just F and B. And on the third position, it says F and R, and no B, just F and R. On here, they show FBR on all 3. First mode, forward, brake, and reverse, FBR, which is what it says on the ESC. Second slot, they still show FBR, but it just says forward with brake. On the slot, the second slot on the ESC, it does just say forward and brake, just F and B. There is no R there. There is no R. And on our third slot down here, where it says FBR, it's just F and R, and no B. Here it says FBR, but it's not. It's just F and R. And here it says forward and reverse, crawler mode. So they don't even suggest it with a brake in here as well. So once again, first slot says FBR, which it does. Second slot just says F and B, forward and brake. And the third slot says F and R, forward and reverse. This one shows FBR, FBR, FBR on all 3 positions, but it just doesn't. It's not like that. 2S and 3S, yes, it's 2S and 3S compatible. Fail safes, problem solving, troubleshooting, blah, 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 that area. Body pins connecting our body. There's our hood prop down there, or our body prop down there. Body post area, showing it in this position or in that position. Looking at your battery tray. how it's positioned in place. You can't move the battery tray. It's screwed down to the chassis. So they've got little directional arrows on here. Don't know what that's all about. But there is a couple of Velcro strap areas there that you can add Velcro to, which we did, once again. Windshield wiper position. So when you put them in just like that, you can probably put them in whatever position you want them in. Hood prop, showing where that is and how to drop that down. Windshield position, how to fold your windshield down and put your windshield back up. Moving on to our roof support, canopy support. Setting up the canvas bracket. Pull out the canvas bracket, insert the canvas bracket into the bracket mount. And there you go. That's all they show you with that. Our on-off switch down here. And looking at our radio. So once again, now this is the radio that we have right here. We got this radio. Not the other style. So that's weird. They show one radio in the beginning of the manual and a different radio at the end of the manual. So what's going on with that? This is literally the last page before we switch languages here and go into German from the looks of things. So yeah, there we go, page 17, last page, and there is a picture of our transmitter right there and our on-off switch right down there. All right, so I know this is a terrible look at our manual, boys and girls, but hey, if you want to read more, feel free to purchase the vehicle and read the manual yourself. That is part of the joy of owning one of these vehicles. All right, so let's plug our battery in here and start checking out our vehicle, check out our modes, put the tires up in the air, and see what kind of brake action we have and what our pins do on our ESC, I suppose. Let's get our battery plugged in here. Put our prop rod in place, maybe. Might make this more of a pain in the butt than anything else. Now, I don't like the way this battery's sitting here, that's for darn sure. I'm going to go through after the fact and trim our little nylon straps off right here and reposition this so it's in a different position. Get our plug sitting in a different area, because I really don't care for how that's sitting like that. Any way you look at it, I don't like the way that's sitting. So we'll figure out something after the fact on that. See if we can get the close down with that battery sitting like that, or the wire sitting like that, maybe not. I'd have to try to position this wire in a different position. Get this in a way that it's not going to interfere with anything, and we'll be able to get the body down and not hit our drivetrain at the same time. That might work there, not too sure if we're getting it to line up quite right. No, we are not. Nope, our wires are getting in the way. Wires are getting in the way, so we're going to have to do some creative wire routing here in order to get this stuff to fit on here right. Doesn't want to fit down there very smoothly. Alright, well, we got her held down. Getting our body pins put in place, they do seem to be left and right orientated. This one would be on our passenger side, the position that it's sitting in. Be for this side, a little bit awkward getting it in here. There we go. Not the easiest to install. Once again, just like installing it on the Axial SCX 10.3 Early Ford Bronco. Not the easiest to install here. Putting these body pins in. Especially on camera, there's no doubt about that. You push this down just a little bit further and I have a free hand to do it. Okay, there we go. Got both our body pins installed, which isn't all that easy getting those guys in there. Very difficult fit. Sorry for the lack of flash there. Alright, body pins are in. Let's put our Jeep up on top of something here, a couple foams. Try to get it off the ground so we don't have to worry about it going anywhere on us. Turn our transmitter on. Get our vehicle turned on. Our headlights are on right off the bat. Don't know if that's got something to do with our 3-position switch here. I didn't read in the manual, so I'm flipping right there, 1, 2, and 3, and it's not doing anything with our headlights. Left and right is working okay. Not a very tight turning radius. Seems like it's turning tighter to the left than it is to the right. We'll mess with our steering trim a little bit here. Knock it a little bit more to the right. Noisy servo, but it seems to work out okay. Ease on the gas. Seems like it's going into brake mode automatically as soon as you let off the gas. And we just lost everything. That's weird. We just lost everything. What happened there? What just happened? Turning it off, turning it back on again. And we lost the power again. Not working. That's weird. Turn it off. Turning it back on. It's wide open. Okay. Don't know what's going on with this thing. It seems to be full power there. Let's mess with channel 3 over here, channel 4. Doesn't seem to be affecting our speed any. It's a little bit screwy. Like I said, I plan on hooking this up to my Spectrum DX4C transmitter, which will get us past all that other crap, as well as being able to expand our steering here and get this to turn a little bit further in each direction. Alright, so our headlights appear to be on no matter what. We can't do nothing about that. Channel 3, channel 4 over here is doing absolutely nothing. These buttons up here are doing absolutely nothing from what I can tell as far as things go. Everything seems to be working. Our forward brake and reverse seems to be working. Steering wheel's working once again on the inside. And the vehicle seems to be performing okay so far. We did have a couple problems there initially with the on-off switch not necessarily working out right, but not too sure what's going on with that. Could be a bad switch, could be a bad ESC. My thoughts are to pull this ESC out of here, pull the receiver out of here, and put in a Hobbywing 1080 ESC along with a Spectrum SR415 or SR515 receiver, and going that route along with adding taillights to the back and changing up the vehicle a little bit more from there. But right out of the box, it's not too bad with this goofy radio. It's definitely a goofy transmitter, there's no doubt about that. Not too sure how our vehicle crawls. We need to take it outside and goof around with it. Certainly not enough room in here to mess around with it. And that'll be on our next video. But the truck looks pretty cool all in all. Nice scale detail to it. There's no doubt about that. It is a very scale looking vehicle. Not much suspension articulation to talk about. That's for darn sure. We can clear 2 foams, but we can't clear 3. We're just barely clearing 2 there. The back tire is kind of rocking there. But it's not terrible. It's not terrible. I'm about to back into a loader back behind us, but seeing what kind of power we get out of this girl. Steering servo seems a little bit weak here. It's cutting hard left and doesn't really want to cut that far. and 2 excavators. Yeah, we need to get this thing out on the adventure course and see what it's capable of. We definitely can't show anything off inside here, that's for darn sure. We need some more room to goof around with this vehicle. Definitely need some more room to goof around with it. Not too sure what kind of power we're going to get out of it. Hold it back here a little bit. It's pretty strong. It's got a pretty good push to it. Yeah, it's pretty torquey, really. That's impressive. I was expecting less. Yeah, and it's automatically set up with brake right there. The way that ESC is set up, once again, with no pin in that brake position. Right now, our little pin selector has been removed, which is one of these guys right here. Was not included on the ESC at all. And that's probably why. That way it's got forward brake and reverse, and the brake is automatic when you let off the gas. So there we go, we solved that problem on our ESC. Alright, so there we go, boys and girls. There's a look at the front of our vehicle. Headlights on. That anti-aircraft light, our aircraft light up here looks a little bit bright up there. I'm sure there's some scale work that we can do to this vehicle to make it look a little bit more realistic overall. But it's a very good looking vehicle across the board. Very scale looking vehicle, there's no doubt about that. Once again, not something that you necessarily want to take out crawling on a professional level. And not something that you want to risk on a rollover situation. You definitely don't want to roll this vehicle over. I'm sure you'd have some significant breakage if something like that were to happen. I'm sure you'd be busting mirrors and windshields and everything else off in between. So, not something that you want to take outside and just, go crawling with. It's not a competition crawler by any means, but it certainly is a good-looking vehicle. There's no doubt about that. Very scale across the board. Excellent looking truck across the board, all the military numbers. Not too sure what any of the stuff means, but I know FMS did their research on that stuff, and they got to try to make it look as realistic as possible with all the numbers, the way everything is labeled and whatnot. They try to make it as scale as they possibly could, from what I understand. So a very good looking vehicle once again, all in all. I dig it. It's a cool looking truck. The windshield needs to get cleaned. We need to clean this thing off real quick before we slap our windshield wipers on there. It is a filthy looking windshield. That's just how it was straight from the factory there. Looks like somebody was smoking in there. Got some smoker film going on that windshield. And it's not for me. I actually quit smoking. That's a new thing for me. I quit the day after New Year's. And it's been roughly 4 weeks now. 4 weeks on Monday since I quit. So a month free of cigarettes so far. Not doing too bad, cold turkey. So there we go, boys and girls. There's a look at our FMS 1/6 scale MB scaler. It almost looks like it's crab walking a little bit right here. I'm going to cut into the right. Weird. Cool looking vehicle. Turning radius is crap. Servo strength is crap as well. Not a very tight turning radius on this thing. No doubt about that. So we'll have to work on improving that with a different servo, perhaps, and a different transmitter and different receiver and everything else, and we'll see what kind of improvements we can make on this vehicle in the next video. Mid-video interruption. All right, boys and girls, I've had the Jeep for roughly a week now. We received some things in the mail that we were waiting on for it. I did a bunch of modifications to it as well that I wanted to share with you. So I'm going to try to keep this as quick as I possibly can. Excuse me for all the ums in between time. All right, so we received a character for the vehicle, a driver figure for him. He's underneath there working on it right now. He came with a couple of scale accessories, an M16, a flashlight, a machete, a couple grenades, and a few other things That is little figure there is no longer in production. That is a Soldiers of the World figure. Not being sponsored by anybody, but Soldiers of the World. I had to search online to find this guy. 12-inch posable figure, 1/6 scale. Authentic weapons. This guy is a Vietnam guy. This company covered several wars. I'm pretty sure, once again, that they're not in production anymore. So if you go to look around for one of these things, you're probably going to be limited on to what you can find. But they've got, this is all the Marine characters. So a bunch of different soldiers, Marines, Navies, Airbornes, MPs, Army, Air Force, Green Berets, Cavalry, yada, 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 yada. Made in China. Formative International, 2000. Wing-On Plaza, Kowloon, Hong Kong. Excuse me. East Kowloon, Hong Kong, made in China. Nothing wrong with that. Lots of good stuff made in China. So, Soldiers of the World right there. Had to find this guy online. I got it from some self-proclaimed ninja out of Oklahoma. Many thanks there, Oklahoma Ninja, on that. As far as the characters go, and soldiers, I should say, they got their wars covered in Vietnam War. A bunch of different soldiers. Not to spend too much time on this. Not being sponsored by anybody, so, it is what it is. Korean War. It just all depends on what you want to do with your Jeep. If you have one of these Jeeps and you want to get some soldiers for it and you want to make some war scenes, what do you want to do with it? Do you want to have Vietnam-era soldiers and a whole Vietnam kind of scene going on? Or do you want to have a Korean War scene going on? Or do you want to have World War I or World War II? What do you want to do? So they've got them all here. Korean War. You got your different soldiers in here. UK, Norway, Belgium, Canada, France, USA, South Korea. Pretty cool. World War II, World War I, Desert Storm, American Civil War, Revolutionary War. So they definitely have their battles covered. No doubt about it. Character is pretty cool as well. Very posable. Little rubber boots and whatnot. All the pockets on his clothes are functioning pockets. You can put stuff in the pockets. His little gun belt and everything is removable. Comes on and off. And once again, very posable. So we'll get a peek at that here in a second. Other things that we did to the Jeep was, one major thing was the suspension. That was actually the first thing that I did to it, was dove into the suspension and removed that 10mm spacer that they had on each one of the shock pistons. Each one of the shock pistons had a 10mm spacer on the outside of it, limiting the travel by 10mm, essentially. And on my channel, I'm all about maximizing our suspension travel and articulation. So the shocks didn't feel too good anyways. The oil was pretty bad in them. When I went to go rebuild the shocks, I'm not too sure what kind of oil it was in there. It looked like a cooking oil of some sorts, but none of the shocks had an equal amount of oil in them. Some were almost empty. I know there's only 4 shocks, but they were all pretty low. It didn't appear like they were leaking. They were just all on the low side. Now, the shocks themselves, they have a pretty fat body on them. They are a 90mm shock, and the piston on top has 4 big holes on the top of the piston, which means it flows some oil. It really flows through the oil. So I used a 50-weight oil in this, which is the heaviest oil that I happen to have on hand. In retrospect, 70-weight, 80-weight might be better, just because it's a heavy vehicle and the piston holes are so large that they, flow pretty easy through the oil. Heavier oil might be more beneficial. I use 50-weight. It seems to be okay at the moment, but you might want something a little bit heavier just for the vehicle. So rebuilding the shocks made a huge difference. Removing that spacer on the shocks made a huge difference. We've got full travel and full articulation on the rear shocks. We can compress both shocks to full compression. We got full articulation left and right. Front is a different story. As it turns out, that they had those spacers on there for a reason, much like on the TRX4 High Trail editions. The front suspension geometry just isn't right on this vehicle. So, which was the same thing on the TRX4 High Trail editions. You have to do some, you have to use your stock servo mount and do some custom work to on your panhard bar and your steering geometry to get past it. Nevertheless, this vehicle, panhard bar, is not necessarily in the right location on it, and you really can't do much about it unless you come up with your own custom mount for the panhard bar. If you go to compress both front shocks to full compression at the same time, it just won't happen. You can only move them about halfway, maybe less than halfway, before the panhard bar and the frame and the top of the axle all kind of come into contact. So a couple of things were causing problems up here on the front end. After removing those spacers, once again, nothing changed on our whole compression factor. That was still the same, because we didn't do nothing but remove spacers. We removed the spacer. We were able to get full articulation on the driver's side. We were able to get our wheel all the way up, all the way, but we weren't on the passenger side. And that was because our steering links and our panhard bar were coming into interfering. So as soon as we start to articulate the passenger side and bring it up into towards the frame, the panhard bar was hitting the frame, and it was stopping the axle from moving about 15 millimeters short of full compression. It was stopping it from moving, so right about here. And then our steering linkage, the way it was attached to the top of the steering knuckle on the passenger side tire, was hitting the bottom of the bumper. So once again, had to do some readjustments down there in order to get past all that stuff. And we'll take a peek at all that stuff. Painting mods and other little body modifications. I did a bunch of minor painting on the front end, to the headlights, to our anti-aircraft light, underneath the hood with the motor, gas pedal, brake pedal, shift levers, as well as installing some custom LED taillights on the back of the vehicle. So those are all the other bases that we're going to cover on it. Not to mention our transmitter and radio gear and all that other good nonsense. I removed our stock 1060 ESC, our stock steering servo, our stock transmitter and 4-channel receiver in favor of a Spectrum SR415 4-channel receiver, a Hobbywing 1080 ESC versus a 1060 ESC, and a Savox SW1210 SG steering servo in the front. So those are other things that we added to it. I also added a Traxxas TRX4 Bronco panhard bar and steering link going from our servo to our front wheel. And those were needed. I had to put those on there just because our original ones are not adjustable. All right, other things that we got in the mail for this vehicle was a machine gun. We got the 50 caliber machine gun for it, and the canvas top showed up, so that's cool. There's a peek at our canvas top. It has all these little eyelets installed on the front to hook it to the windshield area. It has a couple of tie-down straps on the sides. I'm not too sure what those are for. Maybe for tying it together and you have it folded down. If we're tying it all together, I'm not sure. I haven't messed with it. There it is. Canvas top. Machine gun. Packaged very well. Excuse the glare. ROC Hobbies. C1089 16 scale 1941 MB scalar machine gun. Nice box art. A couple of magnetic flaps. One here, or magnets installed on the flaps. It's expensive. It's right around $46 US, boys and girls. Is it worth it? Probably not. Probably not. All plastic. Everything is plastic. Everything that you see, other than the foam and the cardboard, everything else is plastic. This is the charging handle for the gun, which goes in on the other side. This little part right here holds our ammo can on the side of the gun. This is our ammo can right here. Our strip of bullets. Now I've got the grips and handle and trigger assembly installed on the gun right now. When you buy the gun, it comes over here on the side, and you have to put it together. Be forewarned, or once you put this together, you'll never get it apart. It'll never come back apart, not without doing damage to the gun. So after I installed this onto my gun and realized that it wouldn't come back off, I had to trim out the case and take a little excess foam out of the case just so I could fit that back in there. All right, so we'll pull this out of the case here and get it installed on the Jeep. Just mock it up real quick here. Here's the base for it. The base has a little keyway on it where it fits into the Jeep. They did do some weathering on it. Once again, everything is all plastic. The base does swivel right here at the top. And it's pretty taut, but there's a couple little Allen screws on either side over here that we'll take a look at, where you can adjust the tension on this for how tight it swivels. Taking a look at our ammo can here real quick before we put it together. They pre-weathered it. Pretty nice. It kind of latches down, snaps down. One thing I don't like about it is that the lid doesn't come off, whereas on a normal 50 caliber can or 30 caliber can, the lid does slide off. And this does fit into this little holder right here, which snaps onto the base of our swivel mount right there to hold our 50 cal can. All right, so we'll mock this thing up real quick and take a peek at it. Once again, is it worth the price? Definitely not. It does have great detail, great sight detail. Once everything is out of the box and put together, it does have some awesome detail to it. But definitely not worth the price. There's no doubt about that. Great scale touch if you're doing some filming and you're doing a battle scene and you want to have this in the back of your Jeep. It is definitely a great scale touch for that. There's no doubt about that. They also make a anti-aircraft gun to go behind the Jeep. A big anti-aircraft gun or anti-tank gun that you can tow behind the Jeep. I think that's right around $160 some. Don't quote me on prices. 160, 170 US, somewhere in there. And they also make a full-size pickup bed trailer, Army-style pickup bed trailer that you can tow behind this. And I want to say that's right around $100 US. Once again, don't quote me. Might be more, might be less, probably more. And they make both of those items for the 1/12 scale version of this vehicle as well. That's a pretty cool Jeep too, that 1/12 scale vehicle. Now, one thing I noticed on my Jeep, now that I'm looking at it right now and talking to you guys and gals out there, one thing I noticed on this that I'm a little bit mad about is that my Jeep does not have the star on the front bumper. Right where the hand crank would go on the front bumper, right there for hand crank starting the motor. There's supposed to be a white star around that bumper, or right around that hand crank hole. Maybe I'm happy it doesn't have one. But, yeah, it doesn't have one. And all the other ones I've seen do. Another friend of mine online has one of these as well. And his has that. It has a star in it, but mine does not. So I'm not too sure what the deal is with that. Now, I didn't order this from FMS. I got this directly from A-Main Hobbies, not being sponsored. But I assumed what A-Main was giving or sending out was the same as what FMS would have sent you, or what Horizon Hobbies would have sent you, or whoever you got it from. I'm assuming it was the same Jeep from whatever retailer that you purchased it from. Nevertheless, no star on the bumper. A little bit bummed out about that. All right, let's get our machine gun put on here real quick and take a peek at that. And then we'll look at everything that we've done to the Jeep with our taillights and our headlights and the painting and all that other nonsense, as well as noticing some imperfections underneath the hood, some serious imperfections under the hood and in the cab area of the Jeep. We're missing some things underneath in the cab area, and we've got too much under the hood. So let's take a peek at that. All right, moving in and getting a closer look at our vehicle here. Check it under character before we get there. Once again, very posable. Clothes, hat, stuff you can remove. Huge pockets, once again. All the pockets are functioning pockets. Came with a few little grenades. Knife and a scabbard. You can actually pull the knife out of the scabbard. It's pretty cool. As far as scale detail goes. Little rubber boots and whatnot on them. So, pretty cool. Little character there. Not to be redundant on our coolness. Looking at underneath the hood here. Now, first and foremost, I painted the grill. I removed the grill from underneath the body here. Removed our headlight buckets from off of the headlights. Popped those off. Painted the inside of the buckets, which are green. Painted those black. Painted the lower side of the bulb and the upper side of the bulb black to match our little slits here on the headlights. Painted the inside of the lens black on either one. Need to come through and paint the outside. Just a little bit too glossy. Just to kind of give us that covert look on the front. So the bottom of the headlight has a little black on it. Top has a little bit of black on it. Just to kind of match the opening. Same thing with our running lights here. Now, originally it didn't come with any buckets here, or any lights inside these buckets. And you can put a regular 5mm LED bulb in there. You just have to hot glue it in place to hold it in place. Now, I installed a couple of LEDs in here, and it just turned out to be a little bit too bright. Well, way too bright. So I had an idea of installing some lenses, some plastic lenses behind or in between the light and the outside of the bucket there. And I had to drill the bucket out a little bit to install the lenses. After installing it, like 3 or 4 lenses stacked up, it dimmed it down perfect to match the headlights. And then I went a little bit too far with my drill and went past that little square or rectangle on the end of the LED bucket there and ruined it. And it wouldn't hold the lenses anymore. It would not hold the lenses anymore. So I have to order a new grill in order to install lights into these buckets. Right now the lights that are in here are just dummies. They're clear bulbs that were painted amber with an orange neon Sharpie, just to kind of give us that image, as well as putting a little bit of flat black above and below on the bulbs to kind of box them off a little bit as well. So I do have another set of bulbs sitting right here to go in it after we get a new grill for it. If you look online, they do have all these parts available for it. The grill, I want to say, is right around less than $12. And it comes with all new, with new headlight lenses and all that other nonsense as well, just in case. So looking underneath the hood here, once again, day one was saying that we had all kinds of detail under here, which we do. We've got some good detail under here, but I didn't notice that there's a little bit too much. It appears that we have an entirely separate motor over here on the side. Not too sure what's going on with that. So came through and did some painting on this stuff. Used some flat black on our radiator and other parts. Used a bronze metallic Sharpie, in all reality, not being sponsored, but a bronze metallic Sharpie for the bronze stuff, and a silver metallic Sharpie for the silver stuff. And painted our hose clamps silver, and left our water jacket alone. Just painted our bolt heads bronze on the flathead 4-cylinder, which this is right here. This is a flathead 4-cylinder. Flathead, 4 spark plugs across the top. The water jacket coming in from your radiator. Not too sure if this is an oil breather or an air filter. Going towards the distributor, I'm assuming, is over here. Not too sure what that is. Whether that's an alarm system, but definitely shouldn't be there. There's no doubt about that. Put some detail on all these little endpoints down here. This is just some dust down there. Drywall dust left over from building our barn here, or building the shop. The vehicle, unfortunately, has been in here for a week, and it's got drywall dust all over it. Just from the dogs ripping back and forth. So my apologies. But looking at the motor once again, not too sure if that's an oil breather or an air filter. But that's definitely a flathead 4-cylinder, which is period correct for what this Jeep is for like a 1941. It should have a flathead 4-cylinder in there. But not too sure what this is over here on the side. It looks like an inline 4, like a more modern inline 4, with a carburetor sitting off to the side of that. So, not too sure what they're doing with that. I'm pretty sure this is an old school lead acid battery that we've got painted up here with some white for the battery caps, and that bronze metallic Sharpie and black in between. But this looks like another inline 4 sitting here, so I don't know. Another motor on the side in case this one breaks down. I'm not too sure what they got going on with that. So there's a peek of that once again. Hood prop, pretty cool on that aspect there. Windshield wipers, got those installed. Get our vehicle off of our rock stand here. Well, maybe we'll just leave it for a second. Installed our windshield wipers up on top here. Take our camera, unzoom it. These just slide in, kind of a compression fitting there. Use some flat black on the green blades. Just paint those black. And left all the rest of the green green. Just slides into place, and you can put your windshield wipers in any position that you want. All the way up, all the way down, all the way to the left, all the way to the right, opposing each other, whatever you want to do with your windshield wipers. There are your windshield wipers. Do what you want to do with them. Alright, let's get our truck off the stand and look at some other stuff here. Mine has got some drywall dust on the windshield. Spinning the vehicle around. We've got our 50 cal machine gun sitting in here. Ammo can, little clamp holder dealy deal. This holder just clamps onto the side of our gun, nice and easy, just snap it in place. Ammo can slides into this, just like that. Gun is not attached. Gun is supposed to be attached with a screw right through the middle, right there, but I'm not attaching it for filming purposes. Charging handle right here goes on the other side of the gun, which we'll have to turn the truck around to get to. I know it's not very professional, but we've got a hole right here on the side, and that's just another compression fitting, kind of like the windshield wipers, that slides into there, and it actually is a kind of a snug fit. You can position the charging handle wherever you want it at. Once again, sights on the gun look pretty cool. Triggers on the gun look pretty good. Need to take some brown and paint the grips, and give it some wood grain on there. But not bad detail all the way across, upper sight on it. Barrel's hollow at the end, so gives it the right appearance. Right here we can see our little adjustment points. There's a screw right here and another screw a little bit further down. And that's where you would adjust your tension for your swivel here, left to right. This one's a little bit snug, so I can loosen that up a little bit right there. Strip of bullets has this little tang on the one edge right there. That tang faces in, so you slide that part into the chamber, just like that, and it kind of holds it in place like that. It'd be much better if they had like a whole block of ammo in here, with this part extending off of that block, so it was a little bit more secure. But still, doesn't look bad for what it is. Let's use the extreme close-ups on everything. Not too shabby, really, if you're going for that image and doing some kind of scene and you want that in the back, you know. It's worth the price for that, on that aspect, for 46 bucks. But otherwise, it's pretty expensive for a little add-on. And you don't want it in there when you're going off-road, for sure. I mean, when you drive this thing, you have to treat it once again like it's a model, you know, and treat it for what it is. You know, put yourself behind the wheel. Have your little soldier figure in there. Pretend like you're driving around and try not to roll this vehicle over. That is the last thing you want to do. The plastic, once again, is just like a model car. just like a, not being sponsored, but Ertl, Monogram, Revel, all those plastic models that we all built when we were kids. I used to have just a shelf full of plastic models when I was a kid. A bunch of custom ones. So plastic is very similar. It's, you know, kind of cheap and plasticky and very brittle. So you don't want to roll this thing over. I'm sure you break the windshield right off it. If you had the machine gun in there, you blow that right off of there as well. Probably the backs of the seats, the steering stem, whatever was in contact with the ground is going to come flying off. And it's probably going to come flying off because the plastic is very brittle. So there we go with that. We got our machine gun, which once again is pretty cool. Swivels 360 degrees. Pretty neat. And on all that nonsense there. Looking on the inside of the cab while we're here before we remove the machine gun. One thing I noticed right off the bat when I was painting things that I didn't notice when we were doing the unboxing. Oh, my apologies there, boys and girls. Camera just locked up on me. This camera has been a problem for the last few videos. Alright, so one thing that I noticed on this is, when I was doing the scale detail is that we've got a manual transmission and only 2 pedals down here. So we've got a gas pedal, and I think we've got a clutch pedal, but we're missing a brake pedal. So we're missing a pedal down here. So one thing that FMS or ROC Hobbies messed up on, probably ROC Hobbies in this instance, is that on their scale detail that they went all out on and said that they went, you know, overboard, making sure to pay attention to all the details. Well, it's a manual transmission, and you only have 2 pedals down there, so you missed the detail. Another thing that's missing is I think there's a motor down here, like an electric motor or something. It's either got to do with the brakes or maybe something to do with the windshield wipers or something to do with the steering stem. I'm not too sure, but there's some kind of gearbox. Looks like an electric motor, but it's probably not. But there's some kind of gearbox sitting up here on the real Jeep, just above the steering wheel. So they kind of missed that little object as well. All right, let's get our gun out of the back here, and we'll look at the rest of our details on the vehicle. Okay, we got our machine gun put back into our case, which is probably where it's going to spend 95% of its life in the case. We'll probably use it for a couple of videos here and there. Is it worth 46 bucks? Probably not. Probably not. They got a lot of great detail in here. It does look good. There's no doubt about it. It's the little things, you know, just a little bit of weathering they did, which isn't the best of job weathering, but still looks good from afar. The little things that make the difference. Detail is great. $46, I don't think it's really worth that. Maybe 25 to 35 range, but 46 is just really, it's just kind of pushing it there. The case is nice, there's no doubt about that, which is good because it's going to be spending, once again, probably 90% of its life in the case. There's our charging handle right there. Make sure to put that back in the case before you try to install your gun back in the case, or else it just won't fit. Alright, so our 50 cal is probably going to spend most of its life right there. Mounting position that goes into this little keyway right here. You would remove the body pins, slide the base into there, jack the body up, and install the included hardware through the bottom to install that. Alright, looking inside our Jeep, once again, other scale details. We've got some dog tags hanging from our mirror, which looks cool. It's not a pair of fuzzy dice, but hey, they're still alright. It'd be better if these were polished aluminum. But not bad. These came with our Soldiers of the World figure over there. More scale details is our machete right back here. This came with our Soldiers of the World figure. This would fit on his belt right there if you wanted to. And the machete does come out of the scabbard. Got it kind of wedged back here between the gas can and the spare tire. Alright, so our shift levers right here. These are easily removable for painting. Our main shift lever is held in with an M3 screw via the underside of the chassis. Lifts up the body, and you can remove that screw, pull that little shift lever out of there, and paint it however you feel. There's some flat black around the base there by the boot, and a little bit more on top by the knob, or on the knob, just to give a little bit of detail there on both of those items. So the shift lever is held in with the M3 screw. Our PTO/transfer case lever right here has a little clip on the underside. You have to kind of pinch that together and push it out to get that to pop out. But it does pop out pretty easy. Once again, scale detail here on our stickers on the dash. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Would have been cooler if they would have included a brake pedal down there. Alright, so other scale details. Flashlight. Soldiers of the World figure, once again. And that's just held in there with just compression. It's kind of wedged in there a little bit. There's another little touch, I guess, to it. Making it your own. All right, looking at our tail lights and running lights and all that other good nonsense while we're sitting back here. Our little side marker light right here, technically speaking, this is supposed to be amber. On a real 1941 Willy's Jeep, that is an amber light, not a red light. So FMS kind of goofed right there, or ROC Hobbies, whoever goofed right there by putting that one in. So once again, they said it's very detailed, which it is a very cool looking Jeep, very detailed looking Jeep. But I mean, if they put all the legwork into it and all the homework into it to find all this stuff out and to get all this detail just right, how come they missed that, you know? And how come they missed the brake pedal on the underside down there? And how come they missed the engine area with whatever's going on under there? Maybe that's supposed to look like that. Maybe that's not another engine on the side, like an inline 4 or an inline 6. Maybe it's an oil tank or something. I have no idea what that is. But nevertheless, it's supposed to be an amber light over here, and they don't have that there. So detail isn't as good as they say it is. Now, this is just a regular hollowed out lens. You could put a bulb on the inside of this if you wanted to, a 5mm bulb. Same thing with our other little marker light over here. You could put a 5mm bulb in there if you wanted to. Now, I noticed on our first run video when I took it out on the adventure course, which is a great video, make sure to check that out. It's a frozen lunar landscape, about a foot of snow, frozen solid. You could walk on top of it, and just a good time with the Jeep throughout the adventure course. It was pretty cool. Tires did pretty good too. I was pretty impressed. So I noticed when I was out driving around that there was a lot of ambient light shining back through these reflectors and almost looked like they were lighting up. I did not like that. For a vehicle that's supposed to be somewhat covert, I definitely didn't like that. So I popped our little lenses out, which have a little tang right up here and right down here, pretty much even with these little nubs on the body, these little screws. And you just push them in on the backside and gently pop that lens out. Then use a flat black paint marker to paint the entire back edge of that lens black, just to make it a little bit more covert. In my opinion, it's a military Jeep. The lights should be a little bit more covert. And I just thought that was standing out like a sore thumb. So I did that with all our reflectors going around the Jeep. Now, looking at our taillights back here before we get into that, this is our stock taillight right here, which is not a taillight. It's just a little snap-in decoration. And I tried to design a taillight as best I could to match this. I didn't have any olive drab when I was painting my taillight lenses. The lenses, I use an off-road light bucket, so not to get too far off track, and I have a clear lens in it. And I had to paint the upper half of the lens red and the bottom half black, just because it didn't have any olive drab. So I used flat black on the bottom and red on top to color the lens and try to do the best I could to emulate this with a off-road light bucket such as this. This is a no-name off-road light bucket. I use these in several different applications. Great for recessing into a body. Has this little step-down lip going around the edge here, a ring, which makes it nice to recess into a body, whether it's plastic or PVC or Lexan, doesn't really matter. Just drill out your inner dimensions to this, to our smaller dimension right here, and slide it into the body and use some shoe glue, like a rubber RTV to adhere it in place, and you're good. Excuse me for stuttering there, but it was a clear lens to begin with. I painted the inside with a red magic marker, several coats, and I painted the inside black with that black flat black paint marker, which turned out to be too glossy, just like our headlights. So I went across the outside with a little bit of flat black to kind of blend it in. So this was like a stage 1 mock-up, and it got damaged. One of them got damaged. The lens got broken. And I had to go with a totally different set, but that had different lenses. So here we go on that. Here's what they look like right now. Blacked out. If we look at the light itself, there's a little bezel ring going around the outside, a little green lip going around the edge of the ring that was going around our stock light. These are just a little bit bigger in outer diameter than the stock ones. So I drilled that out with a step bit and made sure to stay between the lines. And if you get it just right, that bucket will recess right in between that line, or you can keep it right within that line. So red magic marker on the inside for the red, black flat black marker on the inside, paint marker, as well as on the outside to blacken that out. Bulb was split. The bottom half of the bulb is painted black, the upper portion of the bulb is painted red to make it just a little bit more red. And from the back side, they look pretty nice. Once again, using some shoe glue to put around the bezel to hold that in place around the bucket. I've got the buckets kind of sitting in there upside down, so the mounting posts are facing up, and we've got the rounded portion across the bottom. And use some duct tape to hold the wires in place. Once again, other reflective lenses right there, painted those black on the inside to dull those down a little bit. All right, let's pull our body pins and pop the hood here and take a look at some things. On-off switch for the lights is right under here, underneath our passenger side floorboard. That's for the tail lights, and I have a separate on-off switch for the headlights. So we're gonna have our headlights on and our taillights off, or have our taillights on at the same time. So wanted a separate switch for our taillights, which is right there. You can flip the body over. Right there is our on-off switch for the taillights. Conveniently located. On-off switch for the truck. Once again, I swapped out from a Hobby Wing 1060, our stock 1060, to a 1080. And I stuck our on-off switch right next to the transfer case. And then had to do some creative work with some duct tape to block off the red light that was coming from that. When I first turned it on, it looked like I had Rudolph stuck underneath my truck. I thought I ran Rudolph over. We had a big red glow coming from our on-off button there on our 1080's power switch, which is also a programming switch. If you want to program the ESC the hard way, you can get a programming card. It makes it a lot easier. So I used a little custom method to cover up that light there on that. We'll take a peek at that when we open up our hood here, as well as checking out our front suspension and our front steering after swapping out to our different receiver and a different transmitter, going to a DX4C like that, which they don't make anymore, but they do make the DX5s and DX5 ruggeds and such, as well as other aftermarket radios. You can get any brand you want, Radio Link, yada yada yada, get whatever brand you want. But after going to a brand with adjustable endpoints, I realized that our steering throw was much further than what it was with our stock setup. So this thing will actually turn dangerously tight, to the point of risking damaging our drive shaft CVDs right there. So you have to be careful when you're adjusting your endpoints. You might want to make sure that you keep it within reason, so you're not going to overthrow the steering to the left or to the right. If you're using an ultra strong steering servo, you might just rip that stuff right off. Might rip it right off of there. So other modifications before we pop our hood is to our battery tray. Cut a little notch in it right there so we can run our wires through that notch and down to our battery cable. And then our wires will sit just like this next to the frame when everything's plugged in, or between the frame and the body, keeping everything out of the way. And switching once again from an XT60 to an XT90 on our ESC, which would match up with the majority of my batteries, which are XT90s. All right, let's pop the hood. All right, so hood popped open, balancing on our screwdriver just because it gets it up in the air a little bit higher than our little push rod does, or included push rod. Lights, once again, wiring. Brought our wires together. Use a piece of duct tape, ripped the duct tape right down the middle, so I split the duct tape in half from like a 2-inch roll to 1 inch. So I just used little strips and ran our wires right down the middle, all the way up to this, was that JST connector, going over to our first on-off switch, which is for the taillights, which goes to a splitter, and then over to our on-off switch for our headlights, which is right over here, sitting next to our receiver. So the receiver was another thing that was putting out a red glow. We had an orange glow coming off of this Spectrum SR415 receiver. So I used some more duct tape strips, black duct tape strips, to put around the receiver to black that out. Same thing with our on-off switch right here for our Hobby Wing 1080 ESC. So removed our 1060 ESC, which was sitting right here, and has the on-off switch sitting right next to it here on the outside edge, which it comes really close to this inner fender right here when you're lowering it down. The 1080 is just a little bit wider, and the 1080's power switch is pretty darn fat. Was having a hard time with finding locations for things underneath this body. Everything is pretty constricted. That's the moral of the story, boys and girls. There's not much room to work with under here when it comes to putting in more equipment, adding more stuff to this. There's just not much room to add anything. We've got our steering wheel servo over here, the servo for the steering wheel itself. So we can't mount anything over there. Passenger side, I've got my on-off switch right over there for the rear tail lights, which is okay. And our receiver mounted over here on the side, which is pretty slim. I've got our on-off switch for the headlights next to that, which doesn't interfere with the fender over here. It's actually thinner than this setup right over here. So very tight, boys and girls. That's the moral of the story. Very tight. We've got a receiver here, on-off switch for our lights, double-sided taped. Just barely clears this fender on the way in. Camera's not liking that. Brightness and all that other good nonsense. Our inner fender down there is just barely clearing from here to here. Yeah, very tight. Very tight on the tolerances. So we've got our ESC sitting where the old ESC was, essentially. ESC mounting plate and receiver mounting plate are the exact same, sitting in the exact same position. On-off switch for our quick run 1080. I ran the wires down the frame and brought them over to the side of the transfer case. Used some double-sided tape to hold it to the transfer case. Once again, big red light coming off of our on-off switch. So what I did there is I took a piece of duct tape, once again, some black duct tape, ripped it in half, and then folded it in half upon itself, like this. And I put it over top of my on-off button down there, like that. And I use another piece of duct tape to wrap around it and hold it in place. And that essentially blocked off our light from the switch, and our non-sticky contact point right here allows us to key this on and off multiple times without having to worry about our duct tape sealing our button closed, or having it stuck closed. That's why I use a smooth piece of tape on there, was to create a barrier between the tape and the button, so that it wouldn't get stuck closed, but would also seal off the ambient light. So that did a great job, blocked off all the light and eliminated that red glow that we had coming from the underside. Once again, battery tray up here, had to trim that down, notch it out. I used a pair of side cutters to do that. Be very careful with that, boys and girls. This plastic is very brittle, just like a model car. Once again, you come in here with a pair of side cutters, you need to take very small bites and make relief cuts. Otherwise, it's just going to shatter on you, and it will shatter. The best way to go about this would be to use a saw. A small hacksaw or something to cut through there would be the best way to go about it. So a mental note on that. Shocks, once again, on the back, we've got full articulation and full compression. So we can fully bottom out both rear shocks. We've got full articulation on both sides. We've gained a lot of clearance and articulation with this. We'll take a look at that as well. When we first did it, or first checked it out, we had it sitting on 2 tire foams. And our one back tire was just kind of barely touching the ground. So now we can clear those 2 tire foams, plus we can clear this gas can right here, and we can actually move the gas can around underneath it. So we've got a little bit more clearance with it. Well, roughly 10 millimeters, after removing that spacer. But definitely articulating a lot better after that. So once again, limited space under here underneath our hood with all this stuff, so I had to be very careful with where we were mounting things. Great location for the on-off switch, easy to get to when the body's shut or closed, or in the closed position. Receiver, on-off switch for the lights. Once again, good positions for all that stuff. Steering servo, Savox SW1210SG. That is a blue aluminum steering servo. I painted that black on 3 sides just to kind of complete the image. One more thing that needs to be done is we need to come up with some black panels on the inside to cover up all these wires and stuff. You could use some Lexan panels and paint them black, or some PVC panels and paint them black. Something better than that would be to use some thin foam and make some custom panels out of foam to put in here. Would probably be the best way to go about that, to cover all that stuff up. One thing you have to be careful about is that you don't want to go too far with all that nonsense, because it's like insulation, right? And you might overheat the motor. Not allowing that to breathe. So that's what we got going on the underside here. We'll go ahead and shut our hood down and take a look at all our clearances. Once again, we were having some major issues again in the beginning with our pitman arm here hitting our, not pitman arm, but our panhard bar hitting the frame, and our steering links hitting our bumper. So we'll put our body down and take a peek at that, which is what we had to do to get past our suspension issues down here. Alright, so excuse the close-ups and camera angles, boys and girls. Once again, we had to do some major reconstruction to our front suspension to get everything to jive after removing that 10mm spacer. Here's how it looked like before and after. When we compressed both front shocks, we can see our panhard bar right here and a panhard bar mount. is coming into contact with the top of the axle right there, top of the differential, which is limiting our suspension significantly by roughly 10 millimeters, if not a little bit more. Maybe a little bit less, but definitely right around 10 millimeters. We're not getting full travel when we compress both shocks. Now we can get full articulation as we're removing that spacer and doing our suspension geometry corrections on this side. We get full articulation left and right. Now, we didn't have that before, so we've gained movement back there, or over there. Same thing on the front. We got full articulation left and right. We didn't have that to begin with. Just removing the spacers on the front, you'll get full articulation on the driver's side, but you're not going to get it on the passenger side. Not with the way the front suspension, front geometry is set up. So once again, have to do modifications there. First modification that I did was moved our steering link, our main drag bar link right here, was sitting on top of our steering knuckles, and the hardware was coming in from the top down, and I brought the hardware in from the bottom up and put the nuts up on top just to give us a little bit more clearance when we're going off-road. Losing a little bit of off-road clearance by moving this bar from on top of our steering knuckles to down below, but not much really in all reality because the tires come into contact first before anything else. So it's not terrible. It's not terrible. The sacrifice is worth it in the end. So moved our main drag link from on top of our steering knuckles to down below the steering knuckles. Initially this was sitting on top. Our steering link right here was sitting on top of this, kind of like that, which brought everything up to about here, to the bottom of my finger. And when you started to articulate the suspension, number one, our steering link right here was hitting the bumper right here. And then our panhard bar, which was mounted to this top center hole right here, was hitting the frame right here. So we weren't getting very far. If we imagine, turn our steering wheel here, if we imagine our pitman arm, panhard bar coming off the top of here, and straight lining that to the frame, you can see that you get to about here. And now you're hitting. The panhard bar was hitting the frame, where that little square edge is popping off. And our steering link, which was sitting way up here, was hitting this. You could only go about that far before it was coming into contact. Now, once again, we get full articulation, and our steering link is clearing, and our panhard bar is just barely clearing. But look, at full articulation, look how much higher that panhard bar mount is compared to the frame. So I had to lower this down. Not only lower it down, but use a Traxxas TRX4 Bronco panhard bar. Reason being is for the end links mainly, but also because it's adjustable. So I removed our stock steering link and panhard bar, which are over here. These are not adjustable end links, these eyelets. I tried removing those and just spun them and 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 spun them, and they did not come off. So not removable. So use a old set of Traxxas TRX4 steering link and panhard bar to get this done. A nice thing about the steering link is that our eyelets over here are kind of curved. This one kind of curves down. This one curves up, which gives us even more articulation as we move things around. Panhard bar mount has a curved eyelet on the one end, which sits like that. And normally on a Traxxas, that would be over on this side, and it would be curved like this to fit over top of the differential, which doesn't work out in this case. It works out better in this case if it's mounted upside down and put it down here in this lower hole. So changed our panhard bar mount from the upper hole location to a lower hole location, which the holes are not drilled, but they are marked. You can see a little circle cut out right there. So you have 3 circle cutouts across the bottom. Used the bottom middle one, drilled it, marked it, drilled it out, and then just mounted this Traxxas bar in there upside down to gain our clearance past the frame, which is totally needed. You can totally see that. And once again, moving our steering linkage from on top of here to down here, our main drag link, and then moving our steering link from the servo horn down to the steering knuckle, dropping it down lower. And then I had to add a 5mm aluminum spacer up here between the top of our eyelet and the servo horn to drop that down just a little bit further, which once again is needed. You need it to get that clearance past the bottom of the bumper. Sorry for the angles. Now, one might think that they could just simply lower the servo. The servo is mounted in from the top down. So technically, in some applications, you probably could, it's different vehicles, not this vehicle, but you could move the servo to a lower location, so bring it in from the bottom up. But you can't do that in this case because of the panhard bar location to where the servo is and the servo horn location to the top of the axle. We compress our suspension right now where it's at, and you can see if you were to move that servo, drop it down 1/4 of an inch, now the servo horn would be hitting the bottom of the axle. So the easiest way to do it is to put a spacer in right here between the servo horn and our link going to the steering knuckle. And then put a lock nut on the back edge. So longer hardware right there, M3, and a lock nut to hold that all together. This is a plastic servo horn, so FYI, that is going to break. No doubt about it. We need to switch that up to an aluminum one or a metal one sometime in the future. But there we go on that nonsense. We've lowered our whole steering system here. We changed our whole steering geometry and readjusted that panhard bar. That way we can get full clearance left and right with our articulation, which is huge. That's a huge improvement right out of the gate. No doubt about it. We're still not getting full compression, but we never were to begin with. So nothing's changed right there. Only thing you can do to get past that would be to make a new panhard bar mount, which would be pretty involving. A lot more involving than when I wanted to put it into it in the first week of construction, so or the first week of ownership. So there we go on that. And once again, after swapping out to different radio gear and being able to adjust your endpoints, being able to get full throw 150% to the left and to the right, you're not able to do that with a transmitter like this. You're not able to adjust it up so you can get 150% left and right. So this thing was barely turning to the left and to the right, as we were seeing in the video when we were trying to maneuver it around. And we're checking out the steering, and now it turns incredibly sharp compared to how it did previously. Not good to do that to your servo. But it turns dangerously sharp, so pay attention to your endpoints. Don't overthrow your steering. You might want to play it on the safe side and maybe adjust it so it's going to stop early and not overextend. I left mine at wide open for the time being just to show you boys and girls that it will overextend. If you do that, you're liable to break something when you go off-road. If you have this thing at a full turn and you're on the gas, you're liable to snap one of these U-joints. So be forewarned at your own risk with that. So make sure you pay attention to your endpoints. I think ultimately I had mine set for 104% to the left and 106 or 109% to the right. But, you know, it all varies on how you got things set up. Traxxas steering link across the bottom once again. Had to shorten this one up, and I took about maybe 2 millimeters off the end of the thread. So I unscrewed the eyelet and removed roughly about this much material, about whatever that is on that shoulder. 2 or 3 millimeters. Basically, cut the thread in half. Whatever material is on the thread, remove about half of that. That way I could shorten this up to 76 millimeters from eyelet to eyelet. 76 millimeters is what it had to be to get that straight. And I think the panhard bar was pretty much right on. It wasn't too far off from the stock one. So there we go there on that side. All right, so let's go ahead here, power it up real quick. We'll check out our headlights, check out our steering throw left and right and all that nonsense. Once again, I've got that set for full pull left and right so you guys can see how it's overextending a little bit on either side. And then we'll end our video right there. So let's turn around real quick and see what she looks like all powered up. All right, so she's powered up right now. I'm going to shut the flash off on the camera. We can look under here real quick and see that we're not getting any red glow off our power switch, which is nice. It's much nicer than what it was. Sorry for the camera not liking our views here. Yeah, it's dark under there. That's because that duct tape is doing its job. And then our battery connector would fit right up here in between our body and the frame. Which, once again, mental note, boys and girls, it doesn't fit as good as a XT60 would fit. So hindsight is 20/20 on that. An XT60 would be a better connector right here to go between the ESC and your battery. I don't have any batteries with XT60s. All my batteries, for the majority, have XT90s and a few with T-style or Dean-style connectors. And I think 2 with IC3s, and maybe 2 with EC3s, but that's it. So the majority are XT90s. So I swapped out, once again, when I installed the 1080 ESC, I cut the XT60 off of the ESC and installed the XT90 to match up with the majority of my battery, so I wouldn't have to run an extension in between point A and point B. All right, so there we go on that. A little bit of news. Let's check out our suspension travel. Should probably shut this thing off while we check this stuff out here real quick. Check out our suspension articulation. Kill our power for a second. I wanted to show that stuff to you guys and gals. Our 2 foams versus 3 foams and all that other good nonsense, how we had it set up to begin with up on 2 foams. All right, so there we are on 2 foams. Initially, we had it sitting down in this pocket, if you recall. Rewind back a little bit in the video, about a half hour. And we had it sitting down in this pocket down here. And the back tire was just barely, barely touching ground. Just barely sitting there. So now we can clear those 2 foams entirely, no problem clearing that. Plenty of traction on our back tire down there. We can actually clear this gas can right here, which is about a 1/4 inch higher than our foams. So we can clear that now with a little bit of wiggle room underneath it. Get our camera up on the tripod so you guys and gals can see what's happening here a little bit easier. Once again, a little bit more clearance than what we had before. We can get this gas can under here, and if we lift up our, try to pin it. I'm trying to keep this back tire on the ground back here. So just barely enough room to slide this gas can in and out with keeping that back tire on the ground. I think we actually have a little bit more articulation on the back than what we do at the front, which is weird, but we do. We kick that thing up in the air, have our tires straight, and we've got plenty of room to get that gas can in underneath the back with keeping our front tire on the ground. So about a 1/4 inch more clearance on the back versus on the front. But definitely a lot better than what it was right out of the gate. There's no doubt about that. We've gained 10 millimeters of travel all the way around. We've got full compression on the back once again. No rubbing going on that we can see. We can compress both shocks to full compression. We're getting full articulation left and right. Front, we're getting full articulation left and right. We're just not getting full compression once again because the top of our axle is hitting the panhard bar and the bottom of the frame. And there's absolutely nothing we can do about it. Nothing we can do about it. It's just a bad design unfortunately, from ROC Hobbies. I'm sorry, ROC Hobbies. The Jeep looks great. I love the Jeep. I've already taken it out for a first run. I love it. I think you guys did a great job on this overall design. I really do. You did a great job on it. But you missed a few things here and there. I mean, you said that you had all the scale detail on the box. You said that as we went through on the unboxing, they talk about all the scale detail, but they missed the pedal on the inside. We've only got 2 pedals. It's a manual transmission. We should have 3. So they missed the brake pedal on the inside. And we've got an extra engine under the hood. Or something weird going on under the hood. Not to mention our red reflectors over here, our red marker lights, which should be amber, and they're not, they're red. And that's just some other things that they should have paid attention to when they're putting it together. As well as taillights. They should have gave you taillights. And they could have used leaf springs as well. They didn't have to go with links on this vehicle. As they say on the box, they went with links to make things a little bit more realistic. Well, the real version had leaf springs once again. They said they added links and oil-filled shocks. You can have leaf springs and oil-filled shocks, and it works out just fine. I know a lot of people don't necessarily care for leaf springs because they're a little bit stiffer, and you don't get as much articulation out of it. If you build it right, you can get some articulation out of it. But, some people don't like it just because it doesn't flex as much as a link setup will. But not necessarily period correct. All right, so talking about leaf springs and talking about plastic, just briefly, not to get off base here too far, but our plastic, very janky, once again. And you can just hear it. That stuff is going to break on its first rollover. So, and leaf springs. Let's talk about leaf springs and our plastic body here briefly and where they could have made some improvements. Plastic. ROC Hobbies, FMS Hobbies. If you guys stepped it up to a different quality plastic, such as something that RC 4-wheel drive uses, you'd be much better off. This is a RC 4-wheel drive Trailfinder 2 Mojave 2. This is the first vehicle on my channel, not my first RC vehicle by any means. I'm 50 years old, and I got my first RC vehicle like in 1978, 1979. I've been into RC cars ever since I was 4 years old, learned how to solder wires. My dad fixed copier machines, taught me how to solder wires when I was 4. No kidding, he did. And I was fixing my own RC cars and own toys, electric toys, since I was 4 years old. So that's no lie. But I've been into RC cars ever since. This is not my first, but it's been the first one on the channel. Since we started up the channel, this was the first one. and all our videos were revolved around this vehicle. So purchased this truck in 2016. It's been put through absolute hell, all of it documented on film, the majority of it. It's been dropped from 15-foot heights onto its bumpers. It's been slid down hills, forward, backwards, upside down, sideways. It's had probably over 200 rollovers. It has hundreds of miles on it, like actual, at least 100 miles on it, actual real-world miles. It's pretty worn out. This is just how much slop is in one side of our axle differential. So she's pretty worn out, man. She was rode hard and put away wet. But lots of scratches. Paint job does a great job of hiding all those scratches. But this truck is hammered from head to toe, which we're not seeing. But because the paint does a great job of hiding it. But she's got gnarly gouges all over it. Across the windshield, the B-pillar broke at one point in time from a 15-foot fall. Landed and broke the pillar right here. I glued that back together, and it's been holding together ever since. I had another piece right here broke off for our little vent window. I had that glued in for a while, but just lost it somewhere down the road. But scratches up here on the light bar from being rolled over and slid down hills. Scratches on the roof. The whole side of the truck is just rallied. Once again, light and paint does a good job of hiding that stuff. Bumper was all solid black at one point in time. That's not pre-weathered. That's from sliding down hills and grinding the paint off. Same thing with our custom painted taillight lenses. They're broken from shearing them off on objects sliding down hills. Our little tie-down points along the bedside that were glued in at one point in time, sheared off from sliding down hills. So, very tough body on this. If ROC Hobbies would have used the same kind of plastic, it would be a different story with that Jeep. It would be much better off. So, mental note, ROC Hobbies, you guys need to switch over to a plastic like this, and things would be a lot better with that vehicle. Leaf spring suspension. No reason that they couldn't go to leaf spring suspension. We've got leafs on our Trail Finder 2 and oil-filled shocks. So, hey, you can run leafs, you can run oil-filled shocks. These are 96 millimeter shocks. And I think I have enough room in here to clear 110s. But right now we only have 96s. But she's got pretty good articulation for a leaf-sprung vehicle. If you set things up right, there's no reason that you can't get crazy flex out of a leaf-spring vehicle, as long as you do things correctly. So, leaf springs, yes, you can use them, and plastic. FMS needs to step up to something like this, and it would be much better overall on our vehicle. And the RC collection has grown significantly since 2016. No doubt about it. We've got a few crawlers hanging on the wall, that is for sure, as well as some go-fast vehicles and boats and construction equipment and other such things that are slowly accumulating over here. All right, let's get our camera back in our tripod, power up our vehicle, check out our lights, and all that other good nonsense. Check out our steering movement and stuff, and then we'll close out our video. All right, so it is daytime right now, but we have all the lights off inside the barn. Lights turned on our Jeep. Taking a look at our headlights once again, dimming those out and painting upper and lower half on the inside as well as the outside, painting the inside of the light buckets black as well as, well, we haven't done the outside yet, but we will. Paint those two little fingers right here and here black on the outside, which need to get done. But otherwise, not too shabby. Did the same thing with our anti-aircraft light over here. Removed that from the fender, painted the inside of the lens black, painted the inside of the bucket black, painted the bottom 2/3 of the bulb black, as well as painting the outside of that lens black. Now, I haven't painted these, but I did paint that one. So you can see our anti-aircraft light down here is blacked out as well. Not perfect. We're definitely sacrificing a lot of light by having these blacked off like that. But want to get that covert image going on with it. Taillights, again, aren't perfect, but it's better than nothing. It's definitely better than what it came with. We've got our flash on here. Let me turn our flash off. I apologize for that. Keep your flash off there. We're taking a look at our taillights. Not perfect, but once again, better than nothing. That's for sure. I probably need to come in and do a little bit more painting around these edges a little bit, that I can see some light blowing through. On the edges, I can see a little bit of light here and there. But otherwise, not too shabby. Definitely better than what it was in stock form. There's no doubt about that. FMS could have been nice and added some taillights to the back of the vehicle. That would have been cool. But, you know, for not having headlights or taillights and installing your own, it's not too bad. Definitely not too bad. I mean, we're trying to keep it within reason and make it kind of look like our stock lights or what would have been in there to begin with. And I'm sure the paint job would have been rough to begin with as well. It would have been some soldier painting that with a brush or trying to spray paint it in the garage or something, you know, with a little bit of tape and some spray paint, and they would have been marking stuff off and spray painting it. Old school style. So with our flash off, better look at our headlights, which are still equally as blinding. And our little anti-aircraft light. But it is what it is. Trying to keep that covert look going on and keep it a little bit on the dim side. Now steering, once again, it's incredibly tight now compared to how it was initially. And having a Hobbywing 1080 ESC in here and a programming card for the 1080 ESC, well, you don't necessarily need it. You can program it through the switch. I use a programming card. I set up the BEC on this one to 7.4 volts. So we've got 7.4 going to that steering servo, which is roughly 400 inch ounces, somewhere around there. Way too much for this vehicle. Way more than what it needs. And it'll turn much sharper than what it did initially. There's no doubt about that. It will turn dangerously sharp. So that's full tilt to the left and to the right, which once again I don't necessarily recommend, because it's going to be hard on your axle CVDs. A little bit of a chatter there. Let's turn on some lights here. Turn on our flash and take a look at our steering throw. This is what I want to demonstrate to you guys and gals out there. Once again, this thing will turn dangerously sharp to either side, to the point of it stressing the CVDs down there. You can almost see them being pulled apart. We're not catching it on camera. Zoom the camera in. Let's see if we can catch this here. While it's on the tripod, it's going to be difficult. But if you look at that ball joint down there in that CVD, it's kind of pulling it, separating it a little bit. It's pulling it apart. You can see it pulling it down. It's not even at full pull. So, be forewarned. Once again, make sure you pay attention to your endpoints and don't over adjust things. So you don't want too much throw left and right. And once again, I think I had mine set for 104 to the left and 106 or 109 or something like that to the right, and it seemed to be okay. Right now I've got it at 150, 150. So that's way too much. Definitely want to dial it down. No doubt about it. And that sab box is noisy as well, no doubt about that. On off switch for our lights, once again, we've got our headlights mounted right up under here, and our tail light switch mounted over on the side. And our power button is nice and easy to get to right there on the side of the chassis. Alright, so there we go, boys and girls. There's a first look at my ROC Hobbies, FMS Hobbies, 1/6 scale, MB scaler, 1941 Willy's Jeep. My Jeep, not necessarily your Jeep. Mine, meaning all the different modifications and things that I've done to it may not necessarily reflect with what ROC Hobbies had intended for this vehicle. So started off with just changing oil in our shocks. Once again, that shock oil was nasty. Not too sure what kind of oil it was. Maybe some kind of a cooking oil. I'm not sure. But the oil was terrible. The shock movement was terrible. Needed to get changed out and flushed out. Used some Trinity 50 weight oil in there. Would have liked to have used something a little bit heavier, but that's all that I had on hand. Well, the heaviest that I had on hand. It's not all that I had on hand, but it was the heaviest. The rest of my oils are stepped down from there to like 45 weight and 35 weight and 30 and so on and so forth. 50 was the heaviest weight that I had. 75 or 80 might be better just because of how well those shocks flow. So heavier oil might be better for how heavy the vehicle is, but that's just what I happen to have on hand. So we started out with changing the oil and removing those little bump stops, and then opened up a can of worms by removing the bump stops here on the front end and having that suspension geometry issues going on out there. So had to take care of that next. So once again, wanted to share that little bit of information with you guys and gals out there, as well as all the little painting that we did, you know, with the windshield wipers, the little details on the inside of the cab. Was painting the gas pedal and the brake pedal. Once again, missing a clutch pedal. Need to add a clutch pedal to it. Maybe find a flat black piece of plastic and glue it in there and just kind of make like a little makeshift clutch pedal or something would probably be a good idea. Or brake pedal or whatever. The missing pedal, the brake pedal. Get that glued in place. Adding our custom taillights to the back once again, and recessing in a couple buckets back there, which, you know, isn't the easiest thing to do. It's definitely not for the beginner RC guy, but for you novice guys, there's an idea for you. You know, pretty easy to do. If you can find these light buckets, I'm not too sure where we got these from. We might have got them from the Wish app. Not being sponsored, but hey, look for a set of light buckets that has this little recessed edge going around the edge, or a stepped edge, not recessed, but stepped. And it makes it easy to recess into a plastic body. So something to keep an eye out for you novice guys and professional guys. So there we go, boys and girls. First look at the vehicle. Once again, swapped out all our electronics. Did not like the blue light special transmitter. I say that because we have a blue light here on the front. Did not like the controls on this and the settings on this. Kind of confusing. They got channel 3 EPA, which I think is exponential. Channel 4 EPA. Which one is it, channel 3 or channel 4? We got channel 3 over here and reverse over there. So what are we reversing? Are we reversing channel 3? Are we reversing channel 4? Is this channel 4 exponential? Is this channel 3 exponential? Is this channel 3 exponential? Who knows? We've got a channel 4 3 position switch over here, which would be affiliated with channel 4 on the receiver. So, you know, we didn't get into that, but whatever. It is what it is. We'll save this transmitter for a rainy day or another vehicle, something that doesn't require all that much, like a Grasshopper or a Hornet or something, you know, something that's just basic. This would be perfect for that. But I like to have adjustable endpoints on mine, so we swapped it out to a DX4 transmitter once again. Not being sponsored by anybody. This is not the transmitter that we're using, but it is an identical Spectrum DX4 C transmitter. No longer in production, FYI. Great transmitter, but no longer in production. Absolutely love my DX4Cs. All right, so there we go, boys and girls. Once again, very much appreciated for y'all sticking around and watching the video. As always, questions and comments are always welcome, always welcome. We'll be getting an airplane in the future for this girl. We want something to match our Jeep here and get something to scale realistic, an old warbird of some sort, whether it's a Mustang or a Corsair or something along those lines to go along with this, along with some other characters, some figures. We'll get, you know, some more Army figures, some World War II guys if we can, maybe. Some enemy soldiers that we can have along with them, the opposing Army guys. That way we can be capturing some people. They make pilots as well, so if we get an airplane, we can have a pilot. Maybe set up a mock scene, go pick up the pilot, you know, land the plane and pick up the pilot and go off in the Jeep somewhere, or take the pilot to his plane and leave in the plane. I don't know. There's all kinds of things that can be done. So there we go, boys and girls. Just future thoughts there for myself and you guys and gals out there who are looking at this Jeep as well. Great looking Jeep. Very impressed with it. I like it. It's great out of the box. You don't need to do any modifications to it. Right out of the box. It's fine the way it is. The steering, yeah, that could be used. We can make a little improvement on that. The shocks, yeah, the oil could be bled out and changed, but that's not necessarily for the beginner guys. Yeah, I don't think you really want to dive into bleeding the oil on your shocks. It's not necessarily something that people enjoy doing. It's not the easiest thing to do, to bleed a set of shocks and get all the air bubbles out of them and blah, 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 blah. All you expert guys and novice guys know about that. So anyways, there we go, boys and girls. Some easy modifications and some simple modifications. You don't necessarily need to do them, but it certainly makes the Jeep a little bit better in the end there in the long run. Having some of those modifications done, changing out the oil, made it a lot more fluid. There's no doubt about that. Removing that spacer gave us a lot more travel. There's no doubt about that. Adding taillights to the back, you know, you got to have taillights if you want to drive at night. And you need to, as soon as you take off and the vehicle starts leaving, you're driving away from you, you lose all your definition. You don't know what direction the vehicle is facing in other than away from you. If you have taillights, it gives you a point of reference on the vehicle. So taillights are a must, especially if you're doing any kind of nighttime filming. But nevertheless, I don't know why they didn't include them, but we added some to it, and there we go. All right, so there we go, boys and girls. I'm meandering all over the place. Airplane is in the future. There's no doubt about that. At some point in time, we're not going to move the channel too far into flying, but we'll definitely get some other airplanes or vehicles or items to go along with this Jeep, so we can create some other scenes. All right, so that's going to do it, boys and girls. Once again, very much appreciated for y'all sticking around and watching the video. My apologies for meandering and taking you on this long journey, but I definitely appreciate you guys checking it out. As always, questions and comments are always welcome, and we will see you all on the next one. Thanks again.